move on and get started with the hearing.
Welcome, everybody. Glad you were able to come tonight. The purpose of this special board meeting.
Can't hear you. Mike's not on.
I thought it
Really
was on.
triggered.
I guess you can hear me now.
A little closer.
Close? That better? Unaccustomed as I am to talking. Would like to welcome everybody here tonight. Sorry for the delay. The sole purpose of this special board meeting is related to special use permit application for commercial wind and commercial solar energy application. Mr. Clerk, would you call the roll?
Absolutely. Bruner. Ellis.
Here.
Farnham. Lawton. Patrick.
Here.
And Voigt.
Present.
We have quorum.
We do have a quorum, so I'd like to turn things over to Mr. Kite.
Okay, I'm going to do a few preparatory comments. I'm going to try and be brief here because we're going to try and get through this as quick as possible. So my name is Andy Kite. I'm with the law firm Heil Royster of Peoria. With me is Alex Reeves, also with the law firm Heil Royster of Peoria. Our office has been appointed by the Edgar County State's Attorney to help the county and guide the county board through this process and then also usher this process through. Just for a 10,000 foot view while we're here, this is a public hearing related to the State Line Energy project, which is a solar energy facility and battery energy storage facility that has been proposed by a developer. We're here tonight because there's a statute that requires us to hold a public hearing. That public hearing is for the purpose of the developer to present any evidence in relation to the project. It's also for the public to ask any questions of the developer and also to present any evidence of their own. It then is, once we get through all of the evidence, the county board will deliberate and then take a vote on the project itself. It may impose conditions related to the project. Once we get through all of this evidence, which may be tonight, we will likely then recess to another day, night, to consider and come to a conclusion on the actual hearing. There is a state statute that governs both the ordinance that the county had to pass in relation to solar energy projects and also how the county deliberates and votes on these matters. That statute is found in the Illinois County's Code. It is 55 ILCS 5/5-12020. That statute essentially establishes the criteria that the county has to use to govern the project. It also establishes within the framework that the county has some discretion, though limited, in relation to its decision, in that if the developer meets all of the guidelines that are provided within the ordinance, the county board shall approve the project. I didn't write the statute, your county board didn't write the statute, nobody here in this room wrote the statute. That's the statute, though, that governs how the county proceeds under these matters. Part of that statute also requires us to hold a public hearing. That public hearing is largely presided over by Mr. Keynes. Scott Keynes is the hearing facilitator for this project. Mr. Keynes is essentially the referee. It is a very orderly process. In terms of the order of how things will proceed, there will be a set of rules that the county board will consider and adopt at the outset here before we get into the actual hearing. The developer will have an opportunity to call their witnesses. Those witnesses will come up to this podium. They'll be sworn in. Holly is our court reporter. She takes down everything that is being said. Once that witness is finished with their testimony, anybody from the public and from the county board can ask those people questions. It's a very orderly process, and since Mr. Keynes will walk through each step of that process, so you'll know exactly what's going on as it's going on. Once the developer has gotten through their witnesses, then anyone from the public can also provide any testimony or evidence they want to provide and be asked questions as well. Once we get through that process and everybody's had a chance to be heard, then we will turn it over to the county board. I'll walk them through the process of deliberating on the project. They'll come up with a set of findings of fact. They may have conditions in relation to the project, and they'll ultimately vote on the project itself. I want to make one comment in relation to public comment itself. There is on agenda item number 4, there's an item for public comment. Public comment is, you're free to make any comment you want to make. One thing I'll caution you about is if you want to provide evidence in relation to the project, you want to do so during the actual public hearing, which is agenda item number 6. Public comment is not considered evidence for the county board to consider. So if you want to make public comment, you're certainly free to do so. You have a right to do so. But if you want to provide evidence in relation to this project, you need to do so in the context of the public hearing, which is agenda item number 6. It'll be very clear when we get to that stage. If you want to provide evidence, you can do so. Anybody who's testifying testifies under oath. One thing I'll just make sure everybody understands, try to keep the side talk. If you want to have a conversation with your neighbor, take it outside. Holly is taking down everything that is being said. It is very difficult to do that when there is side conversation taking place. So when somebody's up here testifying, keep any of that conversation, just take it outside. So if there's any questions that anybody might have, I'm happy to try and answer them. Seeing none, I'm going to turn it back over to your chair. He's going to introduce Mr. Keynes, and then he's going to take it from there, and we'll proceed with the hearing.
That's fine, you could have done that too. But Mr. Keynes, we appreciate you being here. And I guess we'll get over the rules for how we're going to conduct the hearing. Yes, sir.
Good evening, folks. My name is Scott Keynes, and I'm an attorney. I practice law in Springfield and have been for nearly 34 years. And my job, I go around the state of Illinois, the counties just like this one, and facilitate public hearings just like this one. I've done hearings recently in Vermilion County, Macon County, Coles County, and now for the first time I get to be in Edgar County. As I look at the agenda, it looks like the next thing on the agenda is public comment. It is my understanding that there is a provision for public comment in the proposed rules that we will get to in just a moment. But because it's the next item on the agenda, this is time for anyone who wishes to make public comment on anything, any county government type of issue not relating to this particular solar and battery storage project. So if anybody has anything they'd like to say, you can come down to the microphone and make public comment. If it is, and there will be time for public comment during the actual part of the hearing, which is, as Mr. Kite said, agenda item number 6. Any public comment? Very good, thank you. Next on the agenda, number 5, consider, discuss, and vote on hearing rules. Mr. Kite, I think if you would, oh yeah, I didn't realize we hadn't done that.
We need a motion to approve the agenda as presented. Well, Carl moves, Andy seconds. Mr. Clerk, will you call the roll?
Ellis.
Yes.
Farnum.
Yes.
Patrick.
Yes.
And Voigt.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, thank you. All right, consider, discuss, and vote on hearing rules. Mr. Kite, this is an issue for you to address with members of your county board.
Okay. Members of the county board, there is a draft set of hearing rules that you've had presented. Typically, we would adopt hearing rules in order to govern the orderly procedure of the hearing. We would advise you, my suggestion is to adopt hearing rules, but it's up to you, and how they read is up to you. You do have a draft set. My understanding, probably the primary thing for people to understand is that in the draft rules, there is a proposed limit of time limits for expert witnesses, of 30 minutes and interested parties of 30 minutes and non-interested parties be 3 minutes. The designation I think that the county wants to make between interested parties and non-interested parties is those interested parties would be defined as those residents of Coles County, if I didn't say that right. I'm sorry, Edgar County. On spot, I was in Coles County this morning, I apologize. Edgar, so 30 minutes being Edgar County residents, non-Edgar County would be considered, Edgar County residents would be considered interested parties. Non-Edgar County residents would be considered non-interested parties. The distinction between the two is if you're a resident of Edgar County, you would have 30 minutes to present testimony. You would also have 20 minutes to cross-examine the developer's witnesses. If you are not from Edgar County, you would then have 3 minutes to present testimony and 3 minutes to cross-examine the developer's witnesses. Okay, with that change to the rules, is there a motion to approve the rules as drafted with the change I just read?
Lisa Ellis moves. Do we have a second? Andy Patrick seconds. Mr. Clerk, will you call the roll?
Ellis.
Yes.
Farnum. Patrick.
Yes.
And Voigt.
Yes. The rules are set. Thank you, Mr. Kite.
All right, gentlemen, thank you. Item number 6 on the agenda, public hearing on special use permit application of State Line Energy Center LLC to construct and operate a 200 megawatt commercial solar energy facility and supporting facilities, including a battery energy storage system on approximately 1,934 acres in Edgar County, Illinois, approximately 2.5 miles east of the city of Paris. Mr. Kite, is that an accurate assessment of what the basic summary of the project is?
That is correct.
And has notice been published and posted for this public hearing?
Yep. Here, notice has been published in the Prairie Press on September 26th of 2025. And then in addition to the publication notice, there were also notices mailed to adjacent landowners in relation to the project, which had the same notice attached to it under the statutory.
All right, very good, thank you. All right, these are the rules. Rule number 1, the county board shall sit from approximately 5 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. on the date of the hearing, that's tonight. Periodic breaks shall be announced. The hearing on the application shall be recessed from day to day as announced by the chairman or myself for so many days as necessary to conduct all business before the county on this application. Rule number 2, the county board may utilize the services of a hearing facilitator, that's me, to assist with any hearing. I may assume the responsibilities of the chair, but only for purposes of presiding over the hearing. I shall preside over the hearing and rule on the admission or exclusion of evidence and on any procedural matters that come before the county board. Please note that I am the one who follows the rules, make sure everybody else follows the rules, but I don't have a vote. I'm not from here. I'm not on the county board. I am just a facilitator. The folks who make the decision are the folks seated to my right. Rule number 3, as part of these rules, an interested party shall mean any of the following. A, it has been amended, it will read Edgar County residents and property owners, and B, all persons and entities with a direct economic interest in the proposed action, but only where such interest is shown to be greater than the interest of the general public, including the applicant. Rule number 4, order of procedure of the hearing shall be as follows. We've already hit some of these items. Number 1, the meeting was called to order. Number 2, there was roll call of county board members. Number 3, the identification of the application and project overview has been done. Introduction of me by the chair and Mr. Kite has been done. Now we are on reading of rules and procedures for conduct of public hearings by the hearing facilitator. Then the next thing would be swearing in of witnesses, evidence from applicant, evidence from persons in favor of the application, evidence from persons opposed to the application, evidence from persons who are neutral on the application, the receipt of written comments regarding the application, public comment on this particular project, evidence from Edgar County, closing statements, and then a deliberation and vote on the application. I read a lot there. But what this means, folks, is if you have something to say about this project, whether you're in favor of, opposed to, or right now are neutral on the issue, you have the right and privilege to be able to get up to the podium and address the county board with whatever it is you want to say, whether you're in favor, opposed, or neutral. You will have that opportunity. The applicant and its witnesses go first because they have the burden of showing that they have met the elements of the Edgar County ordinance, which is often in line, not often, it is in line with the Illinois state statute that was passed by the legislature that Mr. Kite referenced earlier. But you will have the opportunity, after the applicant has its witnesses testify, you will have the opportunity to get up and say what you want to say. All right? So don't be concerned that I'm going to allow, or this board is going to allow, this to happen without hearing from the public. That's why it's so important. Chairman and I just kind of did a rough count. We have 60 to 70 people in the room. And if you want to say something, this is the time to say it. And we really appreciate you all being here. All right, rule number 5. Any person wishing to cross-examine a witness may do so at the time allowed. A person may cross-examine a witness alone, or a representative may cross-examine the witness on behalf of a group of persons. Such person or representative shall state his or her name for the record, and if a representative, the name of the person he or she is speaking for or representing. Cross-examination is an opportunity only to question the witness, not to make statements or offer personal testimony. Questions shall be relevant to the issuance of the special use permit. Questions shall not be duplicative of questions already asked and answered. If, in the opinion of the chairman or myself, a person asks a question which is not relevant or which is duplicative, we may call such person to order, and if such person persists in asking such questions, I may ask the person to terminate his or her cross-examination. In other words, let's stick to the topics. I don't want to hear any questions about, we had a question recently in Coles County where they asked, well, what happens if somebody one of the workers brings beer to the property? Well, that's not relevant to anything that this board is going to decide. So, and whether or not that ever happened at some other site or not, I don't know, but I am going to make sure that besides killing this fly, that we're going to stick to relevant issues. All right. Rule number 6, persons who wish to present testimony in favor of or in opposition to the application shall be limited to the following time limits. That's excluding cross-examination and questions from the county board, county officials, staff, attorneys, and or consultants. If you are an expert witness in a field, you have to be qualified to speak as an expert witness, and I make that determination. Expert witnesses will have 30 minutes to present their testimony. If you are an Edgar County resident, you are considered an interested party and you will have 30 minutes to present your testimony. And if you are a non-resident of Edgar County, you have 3 minutes. Also, I will note that Edgar County residents, also property owners, you may live outside the county but own property within Edgar County, you are considered an Edgar County resident interested party and you'll have 30 minutes. Cross-examination by each interested party shall be limited to 20 minutes per witness. Cross-examination by each non-interested party, out-of-county folks, shall be limited to 3 minutes per witness. The county board and their officials, staff, attorneys, and or consultants shall not be limited by time or otherwise, and shall be permitted to ask questions at any time and recall witnesses at their discretion. Closing statements limited to 20 minutes per person. Non-interested parties are not entitled to make a closing statement. Rule number 7. By the way, there's 11 rules. We're getting there. Rule number 7. The county board may place other limitations on cross-examination, which may include but shall not be limited to the following. A. Requesting that groups who are associated with the same affected property or organization select one representative who alone shall be entitled to cross-examination of adverse witnesses. B, requiring those represented in the matter by licensed attorneys who are also present at the public hearing to exercise the right of cross-examination only through that attorney. And C, restricting the class of those who may be cross-examined to witnesses who have offered testimony that includes factual allegations that are relevant and material to deciding the issue for the county board. Rule number 8, the chair or myself may expel any person for unruly or inappropriate behavior or anyone who disrupts or attempts to disrupt the hearing. Excessive applause, jeering, or other commotion shall be considered disruptive. While I'm not Judge Judy, I sure as heck am not Cherry Springer. So we want this to be an orderly public hearing where the public has the chance to be heard and ask questions of witnesses who may testify. I don't want anybody speaking up and hollering from the bleachers because, one, usually somebody else is talking, and if Holly can't take down two people, she can't take down two people talking at the same time, and that gets her upset, and if she's upset, then I'm upset. There's probably nobody more essential in this room than the court reporter who takes down every word that's being said. All right. So we won't have any applause. It's just, even though it's a gym and you're used to cheering for kids in here, we're not going to be doing any cheering or jeering. Rule number 9, the county board shall not be bound by the strict rules of evidence that may exclude irrelevant, immaterial, incompetent, or unduly repetitious testimony or other evidence. Rule number 10, the chairman or myself may suspend or amend these rules at our discretion. Rule number 11, any person may make public comment which shall be limited to 3 minutes per person. Public comment is not subject to cross-examination and shall not be considered evidence. Those are the ground rules. And if there's any questions as we go through, I am always happy to clarify or explain further. All right. We go back to the order of procedure, which is contained in rule number 4. We are ready for the swearing in of witnesses. However, the way I do things, I swear witnesses individually. So when a witness comes up, I will swear them in at that time. All right. With that said, Mr. Uphoff, by the way, folks, the gentleman in the gray suit seated at this table is an attorney named Seth Uphoff from Peoria, Illinois. And Mr. Uphoff is the legal representative for the applicant, State Line Energy Center, and he will introduce his people as they come up. But Mr. Uphoff, would you like to make an opening statement briefly?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. Go right ahead. You have the floor, sir.
Mr. Gaines, members of the board, county staff and consultants, Mr. Doblstein, and members of the public, good evening. As Mr. Gaines just stated, my name is Seth Uphoff, and I'm an attorney here with IPA Power. That's pronounced IPA, and they're here to present State Line Energy Center, which is a combination solar and battery energy storage system project. And just a brief introduction of myself. I grew up in central Illinois, Livingston County, grew up on a family farm, still work with the family. We're just finishing up with harvest as we speak. Off to law school I went, and then made my way through the prosecutor's office. For a period of time, was an elected state's attorney like Mr. Doblstein. And then once I got out into private practice, I began representing clients and had the privilege to get an opportunity to work with IPA Power in this particular circumstance. The project that IPA Power wants to bring to you, State Line Energy Center, as I stated, is a combination project, and it's a project that they view as an opportunity to provide a host of benefits for the community. And they're going to go through, we're going to go through and provide as much information as we can to present those benefits to you and talk about the aspects of the project. We want you to understand the project, be informed on it, understand what the different aspects of it are and how those different aspects can benefit the community. We're going to have a handful of witnesses tonight that we're going to be presenting to you. Most of them are expert witnesses who will try to fill you in on how these systems work and how they'll work together to create these benefits for you. And we'll try to present that evidence as comprehensively as we can, but we're also trying to be as efficient with your time as we can. I know we're getting a little bit of a late start tonight. We're going to try to move through it expeditiously if possible. But please understand that this is our one opportunity to present evidence, and so we need to make sure that we present as much of it as we can not only to inform you, but to give the board the opportunity to make an informed decision. Because that's ultimately our goal, is we want you to have as much information as you feel you need to be confident in making your decisions when voting on this proposed project. So with that, we're going to call our first witness. We're going to make our way through this, and at the end, which will hopefully be later tonight, we will then be asking you to vote to approve the State Line Energy Center project.
Thank you, Mr. Uphoff.
At this time, we would call our first witness, and his name is Ian Evans.
Good evening, Mr. Evans. Would you raise your right hand and be sworn? Do you, sir, solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth?
Yes.
Very good. Go ahead, Mr. Uphoff, your witness.
Thank you, Mr. Keynes. All right, Mr. Evans, you are with IPA Power, and you're here to talk about the State Line Energy Center. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, and we've got a PowerPoint presentation that you're going to have up on the screen that we're going to be able to go through. Is that right?
Yes.
And you have the little clicker there that's going to allow us to go through it? Perfect. So with that, why don't we jump into the first slide and give you an opportunity to introduce yourself.
All right, thank you to the board. Quick introduction on myself. My name is Ian Evans. I am Senior Manager of Development for IPA Power. What that means is I oversee the development from the conception of the project through construction, ultimately commercial operations. I've got over 8 years of experience in project management development with a specific focus on utility scale solar and battery energy storage systems. I currently lead the development efforts across the Central region. I hold a bachelor's degree in business administration from Kennesaw State University and a master's of business administration from the University of Florida. I'm originally from Savannah, Georgia, so not from this area, but I've spent a lot of time in the Midwest across my career, and have really grown to love it up here. I live in Savannah, Georgia currently with my son and my wife, and very much enjoy getting the chance to come up here and speak to you guys.
And Ian, as we go to click over to slide 2, this PowerPoint presentation, we had an opportunity to print out copies and provide those to the board members. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right, so for board members, if you want, you can follow along in the handout that we have. It'll all be the same information that you'll see up on the slide, except it might be a little bit closer for you. So with that, we'll jump over to slide 2. Ian, and if you could, tell us a little bit more about IPA Power.
Absolutely. IPA Power is an independent power producer, meaning that we develop energy projects and sell them at wholesale to the grid. We're based in Austin, Texas, so we are a U.S. company. We've got 200 employees, around 200 employees. We were founded in 2017. One important thing to note about us is we are long-term asset owners and operators, meaning that we are going to be a long-term neighbor in the community, and look forward to working with you guys for the life of the project.
Mr. Uphoff, I'm going to interrupt and ask that you flesh out his credentials so you can tender him as an expert.
Well, is he going to qualify as an interested party as the applicant, or do you want him also tendered as an expert? I'm happy to do that.
Let's tender him as an expert.
Okay, very good. So, Ian, you described that you have had the opportunity to develop projects. You're now a senior manager of development. Can you just give a ballpark of approximately how many projects you've been involved in developing?
Probably in the 30 to 40 range.
All right. And those projects included both solar and battery energy storage systems?
Yes, sir.
And so you have a significant amount of experience in how those projects get laid out, how they kind of get put together, site plans are developed, how they comply with ordinances and those types of things?
Yes.
All right. Based on that, Mr. Cadence, I would ask to tender Mr. Evans as an expert in solar and battery energy storage development.
All right, very good. Thank you. Mr. Kites.
No objection.
All right, very good. All right, Mr. Evans will be considered an expert witness, and we'll have 30 minutes to testify. We've used 3 minutes already, just a fair warning. Mr. Uphoff, he's got 27 minutes to go.
Understood.
Through this. Yes, sir.
All right. So, Ian, I believe you were finishing up here talking about IPA Power and their commitment to the community?
That's right. So again, we are a long-term owner and operator, so we have a vested interest in our commitment to the community.
And Ian, jumping over to the next slide, why is it that this was a location that you were looking to potentially site a project?
Yeah, I think there's an important thing to note about the electrical grid. I think we all sort of take advantage of the fact that, and don't really think about the fact that when we cut the lights on, they come on, nobody really thinks about how those things are balanced, how the demand and supply for energy are balanced. MISO, who is the regulatory agency over the utilities in the Midwest, has identified a 14.4 gigawatt power supply shortfall by 2030. So what that means is they're identifying a significant amount, enough power needed to power 14 million homes, being short on that power by 2030. How do you fix that? Well, it's relatively simple. You build new energy projects. That can be any type of generation. This specific energy generation is solar and battery storage. And so that's what's brought us to this area of the country.
Now, once you get to an area, jumping over to the next slide there, what's one of the major focuses of IPA Power?
Safety is obviously top priority for IPA in these projects and any energy generating projects. We take great care and go to great lengths at the front end of these projects before any steel or anything is put into the ground to work with emergency management teams, fire departments, any interested parties or involved parties when it comes to emergency response. We do initial training, we do annual training with the fire department once the project is commercially operational. And then additionally, we work with experts and the fire department and other emergency management officials to draft emergency response plans just to make sure that everybody is on the same page in the unlikely event of an emergency, that we would be able to respond appropriately.
So you've identified a need to produce power and you want to make sure that you're doing that safely, and so these types of hybrid energy facilities can accomplish that, is that correct?
Absolutely.
What types of benefits then come along with these types of projects?
I think the main four that I've got here, number one, it supports system reliability, which is important to make sure that the grid is always reliable. We improve the grid flexibility because we're able to respond quickly to changes in energy demand. We enhance cost efficiency by introducing solar and battery storage together. You can offer a low-cost energy output, and then we support the emergency responses, as I just mentioned, with the local fire department and emergency management teams.
All right, so then let's move on to the specifics about this project. So can you walk us through the project overview for State Line Energy Center?
Absolutely. As we mentioned before, it is a solar and battery energy storage hybrid system, so it has both of those things co-located at the same site. The site is located east of the city of Paris, along U.S. Highway 150, sort of in the 800th and 700th road. It's mainly on the south side of US 150. We'll see that, but there is a portion to the north side as well. The total project acreage, as mentioned before, is about 1,934 acres. Battery storage takes up about 15 of those. It's a 200 megawatt project. It represents a $400 million capital investment into Edgar County. And then I just called out here at the bottom that we are in compliance at all times with the Edgar County Solar Ordinance, Illinois AMA, NFPA 855, UL 9540A, and any other relevant safety codes.
And you just mentioned the Illinois AIMA, that's AIMA. Is that an acronym for the Agricultural Impact Mitigation Agreement?
Yes.
And is that an agreement that's signed with the Illinois Department of Agriculture that oversees issues related to land management as it relates to these types of projects?
Yes.
Okay. All right, very good. So continuing on with project benefits, why don't you just briefly touch on some of these additional items that you have listed here on slide 6, or excuse me, 8.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll go through a few of these here. I mean, I think the main benefit for the community is the increased tax base. You have agricultural land as it stands right now. There is an increase, there is a equipment put on site that is going to be taxed at a heavier rate. And so there's going to be a significant influx of taxes to the community. Additionally, we've got long-term lease payments with our landowners that we've worked with that help provide stable income for those families. It's a quiet, it's a low-impact neighbor with very little impact to municipal resources. It is an economic development driver. It attracts other projects to the area that can bring additional tax revenue. We will provide temporary construction jobs that will be giving out about 200 or so temporary construction jobs. A lot of those are local and given to local employees. And then again, with the enhanced grid resilience, I think that's something that we a lot of times take for granted, but it's something that's very important to U.S. energy security.
And in relation to those construction jobs in Illinois, a project of this size would fall under a project labor agreement, so typically would be utilizing local labor. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And in fact, to your understanding, there's some representatives of local labor unions that are here in support of the project tonight?
That's correct.
So let's talk about the general project location. You gave a description of it, but I think you've got a map here to try to provide a little visual.
That's right. So this is just a sort of general location, so you could sort of paint the picture of where it is in relation to Paris and the state line of Indiana. Obviously, for the name state line, I joke that that's one of the hardest parts of our jobs is naming these. I'm not very creative, so you guys will have to forgive me. That's what we're going with. So that is the location where the star is. It encompasses a little bit larger area than that star, but that is the general sort of meat of the project.
And then if you want to carry on and tell us about why this site was particularly selected.
Yes, so this is a major part of my job and a major part of a major advantage of IPA. We take a four-pronged approach to deciding on where we're going to build these projects. The first and arguably the most important is the proximity to substations and transmission lines. Obviously, we are injecting power into the grid. We want to make sure that the infrastructure can handle the power. And we have a lot of experts within our organization that help us track that down on the front end and identify areas for us to build the projects. We then go and we look at, okay, we've got our site where the substation and transmission line is. We go into land use and zoning. We look at local ordinances. We look at the history of the county, see if it's a compatible use with the county. In this event, it is a compatible use. And then we go into our environmental due diligence as well as real estate agreements. So real estate agreements typically come first. We negotiate leases, options to purchase, whatever the landowner's preference is, and then we go into our environmental review. Finally, once we get those aggregated, those real estate agreements, and with setbacks from land use and zoning and setbacks from any environmental features, we decide, hey, can we actually fit the project on the parcels that we've identified or parcels that we've signed with landowners. This is the case with our project at State Line, and then also just adequate access to public roads, which Highway 150 is sort of the main road towards the project.
So you talked a little bit about some of the work you've already done. Why don't you walk us through then the timeline of kind of recapping what it is you've done, but more importantly, what you look to do going forward?
Absolutely. So in 2022 and 2023, we got our initial real estate agreements and our grid interconnection request. So that is the request that we submit to MISO for them to study our project on the grid. And then we moved into our desktop environmental and engineering. In 2024, we got our field environmental and engineering studies done. That also not listed here is when we sort of started our outreach to the county to figure out if this was going to be a compatible use with the county ordinance. Obviously 2025, here we are now. We've continued to do additional field studies. We've done safety training with the Edgar County Fire Department and Emergency Services Department. And then obviously while we're here tonight, special use permit application and hearing.
And Ian, let me stop you there. So when you reference the special use permit application, that's something that's a pretty comprehensive document, hundreds and hundreds of pages of information that was submitted to the county. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And as part of that, there was certain due diligence that was done, certain reports and studies that were conducted, both environmental and otherwise, and then site plans and things like that, all of which were compiled into a comprehensive application and filed with the county. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And then once that application was deemed to be complete enough to move forward to this hearing, that's how we were able to get scheduled for tonight. Is that right?
That's correct.
And did you have, you were involved in the compiling of that application and putting together those reports, right?
Yes.
And had an opportunity to review all that as it was submitted to the county?
Yes.
At this point in time then, Mr. Keynes, we asked that the permit application which was submitted to the county be admitted as exhibit number 1.
Mr. Kite, any objection?
No objection.
All right. That'll be, the PowerPoint shall be admitted in evidence as applicant's exhibit 1.
Well, I'm sorry, application we are going to seek to make exhibit 1, and then the PowerPoint will be exhibit 2.
Okay, all right, very good.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
All right.
Mr. Kite, any objection to either of those?
No objection.
Okay, so the application is exhibit 1, applicant's exhibit 1. That shall be admitted without any objection. And then the PowerPoint of Mr. Evans shall be admitted as exhibit 2. And so what that means, folks, is the application that was submitted by the applicant and this PowerPoint presentation can be considered by these four members of the county board who are seated to my right, to your left, in their determination and vote on this particular project. So they're in evidence and can be considered by the county board. Thank you, Mr. Uphoff.
Thank you. So then, Ian, going forward, what does the project timeline look like?
I think towards the end of 2025, into 2026, we're going to target getting our road use decommissioning agreements, any other agreements that might be beneficial to the county. And then we're going to execute our EPC contracts. Basically what that means is we're signing up a contractor to then start planning for construction. In 2027, 2028 range, we look to commence construction, and that would put us at the 2028 to 2029 commercial operations. I've also noted here that prior to commercial operations, once the site is built but not online, we'll do a walkthrough and safety training with the fire department and any other emergency response personnel.
And Ian, there's a little bit of a lag time here between this hearing and potentially getting construction started. Is there a particular reason for that?
I think the reason is twofold. I think it's important for us to come out to the county early, to have those discussions early and often, so that we're not behind the 8 ball as we try to commence construction. We want to be able to have valuable conversations with you guys, which I feel like we've done, and get to a special use permit hearing. What that means, though, is there is a little bit of a lag, a little bit of delay between this hearing and commencing construction. The main reason for that is going through the MISO interconnection study process. And so that's why there's just a little bit of a lag and some level of uncertainty on the exact start dates of construction.
So then once you get to construction, why don't we talk a little bit about what these projects look like?
Absolutely. So I've got a few pictures up here for you guys to look at. I've got the top left picture there, just included the man in there so that you can sort of see the height of the solar panels. That is at max tilt. They'll be no more than 12 feet at max tilt, meaning these tracker systems start in the morning, they flatten out in the middle of the day as the sun crosses, and then they'll go to the other side at nighttime. And so that's just for reference for you to see kind of the height of the solar panels, and that with the vegetative screening that we've implemented in our design based on the Edgar County ordinance, it will not be visible from any of the residences or dwellings that have been identified as not anticipated dwellings.
Ian, sorry, before you jump then to describing the battery energy storage system, and so that we know going forward, battery energy storage systems are typically, there's an acronym that's used that's BESS, is that right?
That's right.
Typically pronounced BESS?
That's right.
All right, so if you use that during this, that's what you're referencing?
That's right.
Okay. And before we get to that, for all of these areas of the project, there's going to be fencing that's going to surround it. The National Electric Code requires a certain height of fence, I believe it's 7 feet, is that correct?
Yes.
And then there would be signage around all of it. That signage would be pursuant to the code for Edgar County, some of which would be warning signs, other which would be signage that shows contact information for the company. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then there's going to be certain access roads to make entry into the project site. Those will be locked gates at those entrances. Is that right?
Correct.
And at those entrances, there will also be things that are typically referred to as a Knox box, which is a component or compartment where keys or entry materials can be accessed by emergency personnel should they need to use it. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So then if you could start explaining for us what is maybe a little bit less seen around this area, and that is what a BESS looks like.
Absolutely. So what we've got here is we've got on the bottom, we've got a battery energy storage, also known as BESS project of ours that's 95% constructed. What you can see is there are separate containers similar to how when people are moving and they have the pod containers in the front of their driveway, that's sort of a somewhat comparable size to what you're looking at. Those containers are separated throughout the site. They're all tied together via underground transmission lines or underground collection lines, and then they run to the project substation there, which then would step the power up to high voltage and take it to the point of interconnect where we actually interconnect into the grid.
And so the surrounding those batteries, storage compartments, it appears that that's all gravel around that. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And that's a 20-foot buffer around all sides of that system per the ordinance. Is that right?
Around the outside of the perimeter of the system, yes.
And that outside perimeter creates an area, number one, where firefighters or emergency personnel can utilize as a roadway should they need to make entrance in there. Is that
Yes.
right? but then also, and arguably more importantly, creates potential fire break should there be any need to have that on the site. Is that right?
That's correct.
And we're going to have an expert who's going to talk about some of the fire safety issues and cover that in more detail. Correct?
That's correct.
All right. Going to the next slide, you've already sort of described how these tracker systems work following the sun throughout the course of the day, and you indicated to us that the max height at full tilt would be 12 feet or less. Is that right?
That's right.
And then additionally, let's move on to the overall view of the site, and if you could walk us through just a few points on this overall site plan.
Yeah, so this is the overall site plan here for the solar and battery energy storage hybrid state line site. What you see in the blue there is solar panels, ground-mounted, single-axis tracker solar system like you just saw on the slide before. You can't really see it from up here, but there is green outlines where we've implemented vegetative buffering, visual screening, if you will, in compliance with the Edgar County ordinance. I've called out a few important things here. The battery energy storage location is sort of in black and orange there. It's called out. That is on Highway 150. So that road that runs east and west there is Highway 150. The project substation is co-located with the battery energy storage facility. And essentially all of those lines that are drawn in between the solar panels are collector lines that, as I mentioned before, collect the energy up to the project substation. I've also identified the POI, the point of interconnection, which is a high voltage transmission line to the east of the project there. So that's where we'll carry the power.
All right. And you just, going over to the next slide, you just mentioned some of that vegetative screening, and I believe that's a little bit more visible and called out on this slide. Is that right?
That's right. So in the green there is where just one example of where we would institute vegetative screening in compliance with the Edgar County ordinance.
And in between the panels and underneath the panels, there's going to be vegetative ground cover that's planted and maintained. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And the vegetative screening then would also be planted and maintained by the project?
That's correct.
And all of that would then fall under a vegetative maintenance plan, which would be approved by the county before a building permit would be issued for this project. Is that correct?
Yes.
And the company would then be subject to all the typical ordinance requirements of the county, complying with the Noxious Weeds Act and those types of things. Is that
Yes.
right? Then, if we could, we'll keep moving to the next slide and talk a little bit about the setbacks. Again, we're looking at a zoomed-in view here. Could you quickly walk us through a few of the setbacks that are demonstrated on this slide?
So I've tried to demonstrate a few of the setbacks as compliant with the Edgar County ordinance. We've got 150-foot setback from non-participating residences, 50-foot setback from road rights-of-way, and 50-foot setback from non-participating parcel boundaries. I want to call out here that in every area of our project, we either meet or exceed those setback requirements in the zoning ordinance.
And so just to follow up on that, these are the minimum setback requirements for these types of projects as set by the ordinance, right?
Right.
And so you're indicating that in some instances, or maybe frequently throughout the project, you're exceeding those, meaning you have greater setbacks than what you're required to have.
Yes.
So then let's move over to the layout for the BEST.
So if you see here, this is, if you can recall the picture that we showed, these orange and black containers are those white containers that you saw. So they'll be organized throughout the site. There's collector lines in between that run to our project substation, which is located on the northeast side of the parcel there. This parcel takes up, this project or this battery storage facility takes up about 15 acres. You've got a detention pond on the northwest corner, and you'll notice there's gravel roads, as Seth mentioned earlier, around the perimeter of the site. We also have an access road through the middle.
And then you've got another screen showing that layout in relation to some of the nearby residences. Is that correct?
That's right. So just wanted to call out, this is one of those examples where we exceed the required setbacks in the county ordinance. The closest non-participating dwelling is over a quarter mile from the actual property line of the battery energy storage facility.
And that's around 1,300 feet?
That's right.
1,300 feet? Okay. So lastly then, going over your last slide here, why don't we talk a little bit about the impact you think this project will have in the community, and even more than that, some of the outreach that you've done in the community and the relations that you've been building on behalf of the project.
Sure. I'll start with the outreach. We actually hosted an open house, invited everyone within a mile and a half of the project, as you can imagine, with a 1,900-acre project. every landowner, property owner within a mile and a half. Creates a significant list of mailings that need to be sent out. I think it was somewhere in the 500 to 600 range. We had an excellent turnout at the open house. We were there for about 4 or 5 hours maybe, talked to everyone that we could there. We had an entire team of IPA people ready to speak with everyone and had some really good conversations. In addition to that, leading up to this hearing, the people that were receiving notice for this hearing, we actually did a door knocking campaign to make sure that they were aware of this hearing and could come speak. So those are just some of the things that we felt like, number one, we're complying with the ordinance, but number two, some of the things that we could do to just be a better partner in the community.
And you've also been working to partner with the Village of Vermillion, is that right?
That's right. So we've actually come to terms with the Village of Vermillion on an economic development payment. That'll be a one-time payment that'll actually be earmarked for the playground there. Probably in the next month or so. We're hoping to execute it in the next week or so, and the payment will come 30 days after that. Additionally, we've set up annual payments directly to the Village of Vermillion, not earmarked for any specific use, just recognizing that we are nearby the Village of Vermillion, but there is no equipment, so we just want to be a good neighbor to the Village of Vermillion. That payment, I can't remember if I mentioned this, but that payment will increase annually. So for the life of the product, it's going to increase.
And then let's talk about some of the highline numbers of the economic impact you see coming from a project like State Line Energy Center.
Absolutely. I think the story here is a low impact project, meaning that there's minimal impact to municipal resources while providing a significant capital investment and property tax revenue base. So I've called out a few numbers here that we'll actually have an expert to testify on some of these numbers, but the projected investment of the project is around $400+ million. That results in about $23 or so million in total property taxes paid out to the county, with about $13.3 million of that $23 million goes directly to the school district. Additionally, in addition to the property tax impacts, we do create 200, as I mentioned before, 200+ local skilled construction jobs for around 18 months. And then, as I mentioned before, we'll develop a robust emergency response plan, annual fire training, make sure that everyone that would ever respond to the unlikely event of an emergency at our facility is trained and ready to respond.
So sort of as you started, safety is the number one priority, but also at the same time you're providing a significant amount of benefits to the community.
Absolutely, and we do that. I think that's one thing that's unique about us. We do that early and often. We do that outreach well before we come to you guys to make sure that we can get everybody comfortable with the project.
Very good. No further questions.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Uphoff. Thank you, Mr. Evans. All right, now it is time for questions for this witness. We're going to have the witness testify, and then we're going to have questions for the witness. The first questions and the last questions come from the lady and gentleman of the Edgar County Board. All right, are there any questions for this witness from members of the county board? Yes.
I'm not sure this gentleman is the right person to ask this question. Is your company aware or part of any move in the state of Illinois legislature to reduce the amount of taxes that the company might be liable for the entire life of the project?
No.
That's very good. Any other questions from members of the county board? All right, very good. All right, then questions from members of units of local government, including school districts. Any other governmental officials, school board members? You're a school board member? You have, okay, ma'am, could you come down here? Yeah, Mr. Evans.
Why don't you stay there? Seth, can you give
Yeah,
her
I'm
the
going to ask
microphone?
that Mr. Evans. Oh, okay. Is this where the question's going to come from?
Yeah, why don't you come down here to this table, and Scott, or Seth, can you give her the microphone, and then Mr. Evans, stay there.
Okay. Okay, could you please state your name for the record?
My name's Beth Keys. Beth Keys,
Can you spell your last name, please?
K-E-Y-S,
K-E-Y-S. Okay, Ms. Keys, and which school board are you a member of?
Crestwood.
Crestwood. Very good. Go ahead with your question for Mr. Evans.
Hi. I did have a question about the health risks. So, is there any evidence-based
studies that have been done based on any health risk or radiation emission that may occur within a certain distance of anybody who lives near these batteries or devices?
Yeah, again, I appreciate the question. We understand that this is going to be a question that comes up a good bit. There are studies to study those things, none of which have shown any evidence of any impact to anybody that lives nearby or anybody involved in the nearby vicinity. But I also do have an expert here to testify to that matter later on.
Later on, so, because just to follow up, do you know, and maybe this would be for them too, the length of time that they've had studies on?
Would be a better question for them, yes.
Okay. I think that's all I have.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Keys. Anybody else who is a member of a school board? Any other elected officials? All right, I'm going to ask this question. Besides Mr. Uphoff and his co-counsel, Ms. Connor, behind him, lawyers at this table, myself, Mr. Goldstein, are there any other lawyers in the room who have questions for any witnesses? Anybody willing to admit that they're a licensed attorney in the state of Illinois? All right, well then I'm going to mark that off on my list of folks to call on. All right, the next group of folks who get to ask questions are interested parties. Those are persons who are Edgar County residents or own ground in Edgar County. Anybody who is an Edgar County resident or someone who owns ground in Edgar County with questions for this witness, you may come down right to this table. All right.
Mr. Gaines, if I could, I didn't get a chance to preface this in my opening, and maybe I should have. Just for the knowledge of the public, we're going to have a specific expert who's going to testify about the health and safety issues. We're going to have an expert who can testify about fire and emergency response issues, and then we're going to have an expert who can testify specifically about the economic impact issues. So if there's questions on those specific topics, we are going to have additional witnesses who are here to specifically testify to those issues.
All right, very good. Thank you for that clarification, Mr. Uphoff. Oh, okay, yes, ma'am.
I'm
Good evening. What's your name?
I'm Brenda Lilley.
How do you spell your last name?
Lilley.
Lilley?
Yes.
Okay, very good, Ms.
I've got a
Lilly.
few questions I want to answer.
Yes,
please.
ma'am.
I was wondering, how deep do you go with the steel poles? Okay, how deep do you go with the steel poles?
Good question. It does depend on the soil quality and the type of soil there, so I can't give an exact answer.
What do you reinforce them with?
It's driven straightly around the steel poles,
Not concrete?
not concrete.
Okay. And then I was wondering, when this project is all over after, whether it's 20, 25, 30, or 35 years, how long does it take to clean this up so it's back to what it supposedly originally was?
Absolutely. So this is a super important issue, something that gets brought up often. It takes about 12 months or so. It could take less. I believe in the AMA, it's 12 months, I think, is the requirement that we have on us to decommission the site. But for additional protection for the county, we also are going to propose decommissioning security before we ever start construction of the project, so that the county has a way to decommission that. In the unlikely event that something happens and we're not able to decommission it, they would be able to do that with the money that's set aside.
Okay, and I was wondering too, I presume that this property, this 1,932 acres, is in Interstar or in Ameren?
I don't know that I
The
understand the question.
location of it? Is it in Interstar, that's the electric for the services, which is rural,
It's in,
Or is it-
in the area of Interstar, correct?
in there, or else is Ameren? I presume what is Ameren by Vermillion?
I'm not familiar with the electric service territories. It's not really something that I specialize in.
And I wondered, because I think you showed that a while ago, like where do you connect or tie into the grid?
There is a high voltage 345 kV transmission line about a quarter of a mile east of our project.
Quarter of a mile, which direction?
East.
East of there, okay, it's in Indiana or?
It's in Indiana.
Oh, in Indiana, okay. And it's Does it go to a substation or it goes to high wires?
So the transmission owner, so people that own the transmission line, will ultimately own a switchyard or substation for this purpose, the same thing, on that line where we've identified on 150. But we are actually responsible for funding and building that.
But it goes to what? To the what?
It goes to the wires, right? But there's a substation that gets built underneath, because that's the only way you can.
Now, again, about how far is this?
Quarter of a mile from the project boundary?
Okay, that's answered my question.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Lilly, thank you for your questions. Do we have a clarification on the Interstar versus Ameren?
Yeah, all the area, well, on the map, it's all Interstar. Ameren is basically just runs east out of Paris to Vermillion and then on to Sanford.
Yeah, I know all of them.
But everything, all the people, that whole area is all Interstar.
They are all active.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Farnham, for the clarification. And Ms. Lilly, thank you for your questions. Mr. Evans, you mentioned decommissioning when she asked you about how long it's going to take to get this back to how it is now, back to original condition. You mentioned decommissioning. Now, can you explain to folks just kind of what decommissioning is, just kind of a 10,000-foot view?
Yeah, I mean, the simplest answer for decommissioning is restoring the land back to its original intended use. One of the benefits of solar, as opposed to any other development, is the minimal impact to the land and the soil. So you've got steel piles driven into the ground, you've got racking systems that sit on top, and the panels that sit on the racks. It's as simple as unclipping the panels from the racks, removing the racks, and pulling the piles from the ground. And so we would be responsible for doing that at the end of the useful life of this project.
Very good, thank you, Mr. Evans. Any other questions for this witness from Edgar County residents or folks who own land in Edgar County? Yes, sir, come forward, please.
My name is Phil Wright, W-R-I-G-H-T.
And are you a resident of Edgar
I'm
County?
a landowner resident of Edgar County.
Very good. Go ahead, Mr. Wright, with your questions.
If the battery storage unit would suffer a tornado or a high wind and it destroyed it, and those batteries were scattered on the adjacent landowner, what happens next?
I think that would probably be a better question for our help.
Okay, I just want to make sure I get that answer.
Very good. Thank you very much, Mr. Wright, for your question. All right, anybody else from Edgar County? Folks from outside the county with questions for Mr. Evans? Sir? You need to come down to have a microphone because this Holly needs to take everything down. Good evening, sir. What is your name?
Michael Williams.
Michael Williams. And you live in Edgar County?
I was born in Edgar County.
And you
I'm
still
living.
Well, God love you, Mr. Williams. That's awesome. Go ahead with your questions for Mr. Evans, if you would, please.
Okay, does everybody know that there's Clarkator water? We're talking about 150. Harrison water comes from around Clinton. The water comes from around Clinton someplace and runs all the way into Paris right down along 150. How close are you going to be to those lines? Plus the fact that you got Clarkator water, which comes off of those lines and runs north of 150 because it wouldn't come under the railroad tracks. So how close is all that? Because all them little country roads got lines around them.
Understood. I would love to give you an exact answer on it, but I'm not familiar with exactly where those water lines are located. That will actually come as we get closer to construction.
I'm just trying to get it out
Understood.
in the open. There's water lines around these little country roads,
Yes, sir.
and I'd hate for any acid to get down there. Or the main along 150.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else from the public? Edgar County or non-Edgar County? All right. Questions now from Edgar County staff and consultants. Mr. Kite, Ms. Reeves.
Yeah, we have a few questions here. Mr. Evans, in relation to APA Power, how many projects has APA Power completed?
I believe it's 22 to 26, somewhere around there.
And of those 22 to 26 projects, can you give me an idea of like what types of projects we're talking about?
Of the ones completed are battery storage.
Are any of those located in Illinois?
No, sir.
What is the earliest date of the completion of the oldest project?
Around 2018 or so.
And what's the latest date?
I believe we just COD one like a month or two ago.
Right.
COD meaning commercial operation date, so when it became live.
In terms of those projects, have any of those had any thermal events at those projects?
None that I'm aware of.
Have any of those projects had claims on your insurance carrier for repair or for the non-function of those battery storage?
None that I'm aware of.
Of those projects, well, specifically related to this project, is there a screening that's being proposed for the battery storage facility?
In terms of vegetative screening, landscape buffer, yes.
Have you developed what that landscape buffer will be?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Have you developed at this time what that landscape buffer will be?
Yes, sir.
And can you inform the board here what the general plan for the landscape buffer would be for the battery storage?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way that the ordinance is written is that any part of the solar facility that would be visible to a non-participating dwelling would be screened visually by a landscape buffer. So that's the way that we've implemented it in our design.
In terms of what specifically, though, have you decided the types of trees, whether they would be evergreens, deciduous, whether they?
We have not at this time. We will before our building permit application, and we'll be compliant with all the applicable laws and codes on it.
I assume you'd be willing to provide to the county prior to building permit a vegetative screening plan for them to approve that would include the species. Is that fair?
Yes.
In relation to the projects that have been built, have any of those been decommissioned?
None that I'm aware of.
Have any parts of them been decommissioned?
None that I'm aware of.
In relation to decommissioning, there is a decommissioning plan and a cost estimate that's within the application materials. Did you prepare that document?
We had an expert to prepare that document.
And who was that?
Ann Rowley, who is an engineer licensed in Illinois, and one of our expert witnesses here tonight.
Okay, that was my question. So in terms of decommissioning, you would agree that you would defer your question, or any questions regarding decommissioning of those cost estimates to Ms. Rowley?
Yes.
In relation to then, though, generally, in relation to decommissioning, what is the proposal for the decommissioning amount to be posted to the county?
We would reflect what is, or we would post what's reflected in AMA, which is 10% of the decommissioning cost at year 1, 50% at year 6, and 100% at year 11. And those totals would not net salvage value.
Okay, so your proposal is to post, well, let me back up. The total cost of decommissioning, do you know what that total cost is that's listed in your application?
Not off the top of my head, I'd have to defer to our expert.
In terms of the decommissioning cost estimation that's provided in the application, it's about $25 million. Does that sound correct to you?
I would hate to give an answer that's wrong here. It sounds somewhere in the ballpark, but again, I have to defer the amount to our expert.
Okay, and then in your testimony, you're wanting to include salvage value as a discount?
I'm saying that we would not include salvage value. The decommissioning estimate that's in there right now does have salvage value because that's the standard way that we process those. But I think based on some of the discussions that have been had, we would not net salvage value out.
In terms of what you're proposing is that you would post 10% of the decommissioning costs. So I'm going to represent to you that in your application, the decommissioning total is listed as $25,249,600, $249,600.40.
Okay.
In terms of what you're then requesting to post to the county, it would be somewhere in the neighborhood of $2.5 million for the first year of operation through year 6. Is that what you're proposing?
Yes.
Okay. Are you suggesting then that, well, let me back up. If for some reason APA Power and say the State Line project became bankrupt in that first years or 6 years of the project, where would the county then obtain the remaining $22.5 million?
My proposal would reflect the state requirements with the AMA, and I would have to defer to our expert on how we go about that process.
Okay, so your proposal then is that if the project became bankrupt and the project needed to be decommissioned, that the county would pull somewhere from their general fund $22.5 million to renew the project?
That's not what I'm proposing. I think that the story here of decommissioning is if something were to happen, like the company goes solid in years 1 through 6, we only have 10% posted of decommissioning bond, there's an operating asset with a long-term contract somewhere in the magnitude of 15 to 20 years where the grid is reliant on that energy, and it's going to be a money-making asset with essentially no capex for capital expenditure for another developer to come in and scoop it in. So whoever would come in and scoop that project and own that project would be making money. So I'm saying there's a market-driven ideology, if you will, behind the decision to do that.
So you're suggesting that APA Power and State Line is somehow the first company that would have be bulletproof of any market condition that could possibly impact whether or not the project is a marketable project to anyone else?
I'm saying that there's a long-term contract for power that's very valuable, and it's a very valuable asset, and I'm confident that someone would want to purchase that asset or take over that asset
Okay,
and
so
operate it.
let's hypothetically say that doesn't occur. Then
I'm not familiar. I'd have to defer my witness on what the process would be for that.
okay, so is APA Power then willing to back whatever the shortfall might be for decommissioning of the project?
I think our proposal would continue to be the 10% listed in the AMA.
So the proposal, if hypothetically APA Power or State Line went bankrupt, is that during the first 6 years of the project, that the county would be on the hook for determining how to find $22.5 million to decommission the project. Is that what you're saying?
I'm stating that there would be someone that would likely come by the project. Yes.
But hypothetically, that didn't occur.
I'm not familiar with what the process would be after that.
Okay, so where would the money come from?
I'm not sure.
Okay, so you understand that the county that is sitting here, what you're saying is that if that did occur, where would the county get $22.5 million to decommission the project?
Again, I'm saying I'm fairly confident that someone would come in and buy the project.
I understand your confidence in it, but if your confidence turns out not to be correct, where would the money come from? Because we can't cash your confidence.
Understood.
Okay, where would the money come
Mr.
from?
Gaines, I'm gonna have to object because now we're getting past the point of just asking questions and becoming an argument.
I'm going to overrule the objection. Go ahead. Okay, what's your question?
I don't remember. Maybe Holly can read it back.
I believe it's something along the lines of we can't cash your confidence, which is why I objected to the argument.
Yeah, let's just ask the question.
All right. In terms of where the money would come from, if that hypothetically occurred, do you have an answer on where the money would come from?
I don't, but I think this is our initial proposal, and we would be happy to discuss this further.
Okay. So your testimony here tonight is you're happy to discuss what the decommissioning amount would be and the percentages to be provided to the county further when you get closer to the building permit stage.
Yes.
Okay. Fair. Okay. In terms of the decommissioning cost estimates, the amounts, and how those are calculated, you're deferring to your expert who prepared that plan. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. In terms of sound, did you prepare the sound report?
I did not. We had an expert who prepared the sound report.
Is that expert here to testify?
He is.
I assume you would defer to the expert on the sound?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. In your application, do you have a list of the potential manufacturers you're proposing for utilization of the project?
I think we have a list of the tier of manufacturer that we would use, but we have not selected a manufacturer or a list of manufacturers just yet.
Are you familiar with the Edgar County ordinance in relation to the commercial solar energy facilities?
I'm familiar with it. You'd have to refresh my memory on the specific one that you're referring to.
Understood. So section 4, subparagraph B1, subsection II requires the potential equipment manufacturers to be listed. You listed those potential equipment manufacturers in the application. I'm
I'm not sure off the top of my head on if they were listed or not.
In terms of vegetative screening, I think we already covered that. You're willing to provide a plan that would
Yes.
be approved by the county. Is that fair?
Yes.
All right. Weed management, there's a provision in the ordinance that requires weed management to be provided, a plan to be provided to the county in order for that plan to then be approved by the county. Is that fair?
Yes.
You mentioned the closest non-participating residents in relation to the battery energy storage facility. What is the closest non-participating residence in relation to the solar panels?
I believe it's 150 feet, as stated in the ordinance.
And I assume then that would be part of the vegetative screening you would provide?
Absolutely.
Is there any residences or a certain distance away of non-participating residents that you would then not be providing vegetative screening for?
I think the vegetative screening is if the project would be visible from their dwelling.
So if it's visible, regardless of the distance, if it's visible from that non-participating resident, you would provide vegetative screening.
That's the way the language in the ordinance is written in my memory.
Has there been any geotechnical boring reports for the project?
There have not been at this point.
Have you determined whether or not the pilings could be driven, or I'm sorry, screwed in as opposed to driven?
That's something that we would find out in the geotechnical analysis.
Okay. If the geotechnical analysis found that the soils could support a screwed pilot, would you provide a screwed pilot?
I'm not familiar enough with the engineering of the pilings to make a comment on that.
Something that you would be willing to discuss with the county as it gets closer to the building permit stage?
Yes.
In terms of the water lines that the gentleman mentioned before, if I understand it correctly, you're not familiar with water lines, where they might lie along the roadway or otherwise in the project area, but fair to say that if there are water lines, you would make sure that the water lines are protected and that the manager of those water lines could have access to the water lines in order to make any repairs or inspections necessary. Is that fair?
Yes.
Have you done any drain tile surveys at this point?
We have not.
If there are any major drain tiles within that area, in relation to the solar panels, I assume you would make sure that those drain tiles are accessible for those to be able to make any repairs to those drain tiles if they lie within the project area. Is that fair?
Yes.
In terms of battery storage, do you have any idea if there's any drain tiles within the battery storage area?
I don't know until we do our drain tile survey.
If there are drain tiles under the battery storage, how do you propose to make any repairs to those drain tiles if they're under the battery?
We have a negotiated agreement with the landowner on how we would propose to fix those, but the general gist of the rule is you fix it, you replace it, or you fix it, you break it, or you break it, you fix it.
Understood. Okay. Okay, Mr. Evans, I think that's all the questions I have for you. I appreciate your time.
Yes, sir, thank you.
All right, very good. Thank you, Mr. Kite. You're not done yet, Mr. Evans. Hang on just a second. I want to clarify something in the rules. In rule number 6 on cross-examination, interested parties are limited to 20 minutes per witness. Cross-examination by non-interested parties limited to 3 minutes per witness. Mr. Kite went longer than 3 minutes, probably came close to 20 minutes, but the rule says the county board, their officials, staff, attorneys, and consultants should not be limited by time. So that's the reason he went long. And he's doing the job for the county board by asking all those questions. Mr. Uphoff, before we get to redirect examination, the issue of potential manufacturers of the panels, if it's not in the application, do you have somebody here who can address what potential manufacturers you might have, and we can just put that on the record?
Yeah, I can confer with the staff and witnesses that we have here, but I'm sure we can probably put together a list. Tier 1 manufacturers, it's not a particularly long list, I don't believe, so we should be able to list off what those Tier 1 manufacturers are. Tier 1 being the highest level of manufacturing of those components.
Maybe we can do that during the break that's going to be coming up.
All right.
It's time now for redirect examination. You get to ask questions of your witness based upon the questions that have been asked of Mr. Evans so far. Go right ahead.
Thank you. In relation to the water lines that were referenced, any geotechnical work that you were talking about is also going to include location of all utilities, right?
That in the Alta survey, that we would do, yes.
Right, so there would be,
Alta, ALTA.
right, so there would be geotechnical surveying that's done, you're gonna be doing the drain tile surveying, and then there's also the typical Alta survey, which identifies all utilities, so you would be aware of where all those are, correct?
That's right.
And that would all be done in advance of the final planning stages before a building permit would be submitted, because those are required to be submitted with the building permit,
That's
correct?
correct.
So at that point in time, you would identify where all those utilities are and be able to plan around them. And wouldn't it be also fair to say that typically those types of utilities are nearby the roadways and right-of-ways, is that correct?
That's correct.
And for this project, there's a minimum 50 feet buffer zone or setback from the edge of any road right-of-way, is that right?
That's correct.
So from the edge of the right-of-way, there's always going to be an additional 50 feet that's open where there's likely to be the opportunity for utilities and all that to run.
That's correct.
So you wouldn't be building in that area, it would be an area that would be open and free, we wouldn't have to worry about those issues.
That's correct.
Okay. And then in relation to drain tiles, similarly, you would identify where those drain tiles are, and then initially the plan would be to, if possible, work around where those drain tiles are located when you're either driving posts or setting equipment, is that correct?
That's correct.
And in the event that you weren't able to work around them, then there would also be the option of rerouting some of those tiles, as long as that was done by a certified drain tile expert who would ensure that they're going to account for the upland and downstream neighbors in terms of how that drainage is going to operate. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And that's all required under the Illinois Drainage Code, which would be applicable to this throughout the entirety of the project anyway. Is that right?
That's correct.
So not only is there the AMA, which is the Agricultural Impact Mitigation Agreement that covers drain tiles, but there's also the Illinois Drainage Code, which is a state law that covers all of it.
Yes.
Okay. Lastly, and I don't want to get too into the weeds because I know we've got another expert to talk about the salvage issues, but one of the questions you were asked about was if there was this hypothetical scenario where the company went defunct within the first 6 years, and you indicated that you would have a high value asset because there's contracts that will be locked in where companies will be paying for the power that would be produced by this project. Is that right?
That's correct.
And so if it became a distressed property, if your company was all of a sudden not going to be able to continue to own it, there would be high likelihood that there's going to be a line of people seeking to purchase that because there's already a valuable contract that's associated with it, right?
That's correct.
And what you were indicating is that they would be able to buy that asset at a distressed price and wouldn't have to spend all the capital to build the project. Is that correct?
That's correct.
But in the event of the hypothetical scenario that was outlined by Mr. Kite, and let's say there were no buyers that were going to take that project in the unlikely scenario, there's also salvage value that would come along with, if the project had to be decommissioned, all of those elements that were on there would be within their first 6 years of use, is that right?
That's correct.
So all of those battery storage components, all of those panels, all of the racking, all of that equipment would have, at that point, still a very high salvage value, is that right?
That's correct.
And when I say high salvage value, that would be either in relation to what it could be reused for and resold for, is that right?
That's correct.
So those battery systems at that point in time, you're talking about approximately, $400 million investment into the construction here?
That's correct.
And not all of that obviously is in the battery systems, but there would be a significant amount of value in those battery systems to be sold off even individually, is that right?
Yes.
So even if the project is going to be decommissioned, selling off those batteries is going to bring in a very large amount of salvage value, right?
Yes.
Same thing with the panels. The panels are guaranteed and warranted up to 25 years, typically, sometimes longer, is that right?
That's correct.
So if you had panels that were within the first couple of years of their operation, they've still got a long life left on them that can be utilized by any other company, is that right?
That's correct.
So it wouldn't just be that these are going to scrapyard and you're getting minimal salvage value. We're talking about actually sort of resale salvage value for these types of materials, is that right?
That's correct.
Do you have any idea what the amount is for the salvage value as it relates to those products, or would that be a question better answered by the expert?
That would be better answered by the expert.
But if the county had to decommission under this hypothetical scenario, anybody they hired to do the decommissioning would be able to utilize that salvage value, and the county would be able to utilize that salvage value to offset those costs, is that right?
That's correct.
And to the best of your knowledge and understanding, is that part of why the state law is structured the way that it is in setting the financial assurances for these types of projects?
Yes.
No further questions.
All right, very good. Thank you, Mr. Alphoff. All right, there have been a number of questions by the attorney for the Edgar County Board. Very thorough cross-examination by Mr. Kite. But the final questions for this witness come from members of the county board. Folks, do you have any other questions? Your attorney grilled him pretty good. Okay, Mr. Chairman.
You talked about the value of the salvage. And you know how technology moves. In 5 or 6 years, the technology may surpass what's out there. So how does that help us? I mean, you're talking about a high value, but if this is worth $1 now, it may only be worth 50 cents later because we come up with something new. In 5 or 6 years, I can't tell you how much has happened in my life. You look at past the last few years, so how do we reconcile that, sir?
It's a question for Mr. Evans, if you could.
Mr. Evans, I think the question is how do you try to account for advances in technology? Again, would that be a question that might be better answered by your expert on decommissioning?
Yes.
But to the extent that you can answer that, would it also be fair to say that when it comes to energy generation, currently, and what we're talking about, it's not like cell phone technology or computer technology, actually generating electrical power. That's a technology, would you say, that's been somewhat more static than if you're thinking of just simple electronics?
Yes.
The only thing I have solar. I know we put in 48 panels, and then we could add 6 more. Those 6 more, because of, that was just in 3 or 4 years, jumped the output a bunch compared to what the 48 were doing. So I understand the generation of electricity is electricity.
I can't hear it.
Electricity is electricity, but I'm just saying technology in the actual units that pull the energy in have just changed immensely just in the last few years. So how do we reconcile that?
I wouldn't be able to speculate on how that would, how the potential cost of those would change, or the sound value of those might change, but I would defer to my decommissioning expert witness to answer that.
All right, any other questions for the county board? Yes, Mr. Carter.
The vegetative screening, is it inside the fence?
It's outside the fence.
Outside the fence? In the 50-foot restricted area that is the landowners to use?
Sorry, repeat.
50, from the fence, from the road to the fence is 50 feet, according to the
Correct.
county ordinance. And you're going to be putting that vegetative screening inside that, on the 50 feet that belongs to the landowner.
I believe that's how it's designed as it sits right now.
Okay. And is the landowner compensated for that some way, somehow?
Yes.
Okay. On the decommissioning, you stated that, in the first 5 years, it's 10%. And according to AMA, it's in the rules of AMA, it's 10%. After 5 years, it goes to 50%. After 10 years, it's 100%. Okay.
Mr. Farnham, I'm going to have to ask you, because there's folks not here.
On that 10%, you said that the county, between now and closer to the project moving on, you will negotiate a decommissioning plan with the county.
It's required that we do that prior to the building permit.
Right. But specifically, AMA has the 10%, 50%, 100%. But can we negotiate with you to increase that amount? Or are we locked into that 10%? Because, there's discrepancy in somebody's opinion, in my opinion, on whether the county's going to be stuck with it. And then ultimately, the bond that you put up, there's only so much money, and then it reverts back to the landowner's going to be stuck. So can that be negotiated to raise that bond amount?
I think in the years of communication that we've had with you guys, we've built a line of trust. I think that's something that we would be willing to discuss with you guys.
Well, I still want to be locked into that, the AMA agreement 10%, and then we, you know.
There is no locked in, there's no locked into it.
Okay, I wanted to make sure of that.
All right, very good. Any other questions from the county board? All right, very good. Mr. Evans, you may step down.
Thank you.
How you doing? Do you want, are you able to take one more witness or do you need a recess?
Sorry.
7:15, you've got, how about if we do one more witness direct examination, take a recess, and then come back with questions for the witness. So, Mr. Uphoff, with that, call your next.
This time we would call Jacob Poling, an acoustician, or an expert in acoustics, I should say.
Good evening, sir.
Evening.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth?
I do.
Okay, very good.
Mr. Poling, good afternoon, or good evening at this point. We're getting your slideshow up, but we've also had an opportunity to print it out and provide it to the county board. So in the interest of time, we'll try to keep moving along here because the first couple of slides are introductory. So if you could you please just give yourself a full introduction to the board?
Sure.
You'll have to wait on that, we're still getting loaded.
Yes, my name is Jacob Poling. I'm a senior acoustical engineer at Stantec. I have a Bachelor's of Arts degree in acoustics from Columbia College, Chicago. About 15 years of experience in the field doing environmental noise assessments. And I am board certified by the Institute of Noise Control Engineering, which is analogous to a professional engineer license in the industry.
I've got a real important question. How do you spell your last name?
Poling.
And Mr. Poling, you indicate, now we got the slide up here, so you've had about 15 years of experience in doing these types of environmental noise studies, is that correct?
That's right.
And Stantec is a firm that consults with various companies that are looking to develop projects of all types, is that right?
Correct.
But you've got at least 15 years of experience with these types of environmental projects, is that correct?
Correct.
So at this point in time, I would ask to certify Mr. Poling as an expert in acoustics.
Mr. Poling, how many times have you testified at hearings such as this?
Probably 6 or 7.
And when was your most recent time that you testified at a public hearing?
In the last 2 months, I've testified in Kentucky.
Okay, very good. And approximately how many of these acoustic studies have you conducted?
For these types of facilities?
Yes, sir.
Probably 40 to 50.
All right, Mr. Kite, do you have any questions or objection to him being qualified as an expert witness?
No objection.
All right, Mr. Uphoff, I will consider Mr. Poling as an expert witness. Therefore, he will have 30 minutes in which to testify.
Thank you. So, Mr. Poling, if you could, we'll proceed to the next slide here. And can you give us just some high-level basics about sound in your industry and what it is that you're doing with it?
Sure. So, some basics about sound to understand the presentation. When you measure the loudness of sound, that's measured in decibels, abbreviated as dB. A-weighted decibels, or dBA, are most commonly used when you talk about sound in communities. And that metric accounts for human hearing characteristics.
And when you say that, that means that helps put it in context of what it would sound like as best we understand to the human ear. Is that correct?
Yes, that's the intent. Yep. And sound, when you're talking about sound outdoors, it reduces with the distance you are from the source of the sound. So in addition to distance, how loud something is at a certain location is dependent on the terrain, the ground type, any solid structures like buildings or walls in the way, and also meteorological conditions.
So that would be the sort of the fewer things you have between the emitting source of sound and the receiver, the fewer things in between, the less it'll interact with the sound and muffle it, right?
That's correct.
And then there can be certain atmospheric conditions, a clear night we may have all experienced being able to hear something further away than what we might normally hear. Is that right?
Correct.
So rolling over then into the next part of this, were you tasked with trying to do a sound study for the State Line Energy Project?
Yes, I was.
All right, and can you walk us through how you go about conducting such a study?
Can we advance the slide, please?
Oh, is that the working?
Yes. So the overall goal of the study is to estimate how much sound the project would be expected to generate in nearby residences. So that starts with a desktop review to identify where those residences are that are near the project. We then construct a three-dimensional model using computer software with internationally accepted standards for sound predictions to estimate sound levels at those residences. So we, in that model, account for site topography, if there's any hills or other terrain features, key aspects of the site layout, like where the equipment that emits noise is located. That includes the solar inverters, battery energy storage containers and inverters, and also substation power transformers. And then a key input to the model is the amount of noise that the equipment generates, which is based on noise testing reports provided by manufacturers. And then, of course, the locations of nearby residences are added to the model once where the noise is estimated at.
And when you were referencing the 3D modeling, that's a computer program that's used in the industry, is that correct?
Yes, it's a program called CADNA-A, which is a commonly used tool in the industry. CADNA-A, C-A-D-N-A.
And that system implements some of these international standards that you referenced, is that correct?
Yes, the primary standard is the ISO 9613-2 standard.
So then, continuing on with your study methodology and how you go about this, can you keep walking us through what types of inputs you take into account when you're doing your model?
Yeah, some of the assumptions we make in the modeling, and really this is intended to be conservative and estimate a worst-case condition for what we expected for the site, is that we assume during daytime all equipment would be operating at the highest capacity it's expected to operate at simultaneously. During nighttime, the solar inverters would not be running because there's no sunlight, but the battery energy storage equipment and the substation power transformer is assumed to operate continuously, even though it would likely only run intermittently at night when there is the demand from the power grid. We assume a ground absorption value of 0.5, which is kind of a mix of hard and soft ground. We assume that there's downwind sound propagation from all sources to all receivers, which is one of those meteorological conditions that can result in higher sound levels. And we specifically don't account for any attenuation from existing vegetation or buildings, just again to be conservative and estimate worst-case sound levels.
So when you're referencing conservative, and you're saying you're trying to model for a worst-case scenario, what would have the greatest, what scenario would have, as you can determine as an expert, the greatest impact, right?
Yes, which scenario would result in highest sound level?
Highest sound level. And so by saying conservative, what you mean is that you're working to sort of, in a way, overestimate what's likely to occur in real-world conditions. Is that fair?
That's fair, yeah.
And so a couple of those things you indicated, something being downwind, so that's the meteorological type of condition where sound is going to carry better if the wind's carrying it towards the receiver, right?
Correct.
And then when you were talking about no attenuation from the vegetation or existing buildings, so this model, aside from accounting for terrain, basically assumes that there's no trees and no buildings that would possibly impact the sound.
Yes.
Correct. So once you took those inputs and put them in, does the modeling system then start to provide you with results?
Yes, two of the key results that come out of it are estimated sound levels at residences in both A-weighted sound levels and also what's called octave band sound levels, which are sound levels at certain frequencies.
And why is it that it's and jumping over to the next slide, why is it important that you get sound levels at different octave bands?
Yeah, the intent of the analysis is really to compare estimated sound levels to the applicable noise limits, and in this case that's the Illinois Pollution Control Board standards. Those are expressed in octave band sound levels, so that's why we include that in the output.
So the Illinois Pollution Control Board has a uniform set of sound level standards for the entire state, is that right?
Yes, there are standards that apply across the state depending on land use of the emitting and receiving.
Right. So then you look at the different types of land use and you take that into account, but such as in this situation, you're out in a more agricultural area, but the receivers that you're accounting for are residential receivers, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So if you could then walk us through what some of your findings were in relation to those Illinois Pollution Control Board standards.
Sure. The estimated sound levels, when we went through the modeling, showed that at most of the receptors we identified, or residences we identified in the area, sound levels are expected to be 35 dBA or less. The highest estimated sound levels at the residence nearest to the battery energy storage site was expected to be 46 dBA during daytime and 45 dBA during nighttime. And if you convert those Illinois Pollution Control Board noise limits to the more common A-weighted sound levels, that is the 61 dBA daytime limit and 51 at night, which is, again, the project is expected to be below that.
And Jacob, I apologize, I accidentally skipped a slide here. So if we go back one, I think that's where you were referencing that there's different limits for daytime and nighttime, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. There's separate daytime and nighttime limits.
And so what are the daytime limits for the Illinois Pollution Control Board standard?
The daytime limits, again, they're expressed in octave bands, but for ease of talking about it, converted them to more common A-weighted sound levels, and that is 61 dBA during the day.
And you've got the hours there, that's from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., is that correct?
That's correct.
And then for the nighttime?
Nighttime, the limit is 51 dBA at night, from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. at residences, and those limits do apply at the residential use areas.
And so now jumping over to the slide that I apologize we skipped to. So what were your, you sort of already touched on these, but were most of the receptor locations or residences, what were the sound levels that you recorded or determined were at those locations?
For the majority of the residences within a half mile, it was 35 dBA or less during both days.
And so that would be well below the standard for the Illinois Pollution Control Board standard?
Yes.
And then the highest estimated sound levels you have indicated here, those, would that be a particular residence that is located near something in this particular project?
Yes, those are sound levels at the residence that's closest residence to the north of the battery energy storage facility.
And so it's at that residence that you indicated here, 46 dBA during the day and 45 dBA during the nighttime?
Correct.
And so even that particular location, which was closest to the battery energy storage system and the substation, that's still well below the requirements for the Illinois Pollution Control Board, is that right?
Yes, it does meet the requirements.
Or it meets the requirements. And you indicated before that you put these in dBA to make it a little bit more understandable, but would it be fair to say that your report and your model laid out all of these octave band levels for all of these different locations?
Yes, correct. The octave band sound levels each residence for both day and night are in the report, and for comparison to state limits.
And they're all in compliance?
Yes.
And so your ultimate conclusion was that last sentence there, is that correct?
Yes, the end conclusion of the study was that the sound from the project equipment is expected to meet the applicable state noise limits during both day and night periods.
All right, those are my questions.
All right, very good. Thank you, Mr. Uphoff. All right, Mr. Poling, you're going to be on the witness stand with questions after we take a break. Folks, it is 7:30 on the dot. Let's take a 15-minute recess. Holly's going to exercise her fingers, well, or maybe just rest her fingers, and the rest of us can find the restrooms or water or what have you. But the Edgar County Board is in recess until 7:45 p.m. Thank you.
No,
I got that hearing, but you were saying and I see what you're doing here. It's all right time. One is like Michael. Main we're going to be so that's just reality. No sound problem. I understand they got honest to God. That's what I'm saying about I wouldn't expect this to last long. This project, but as time goes on, that rate for what they're paying starting out.
Manufacturers to gather that during the break, so I've got those. Do you want me just to list those off? Would you prefer that we type it up in a list and submit it? Happy to do that.
Why don't you do both? Why don't you read the list now and then present it as an exhibit in the
Okay.
next session of this hearing?
Sure. So for the battery energy storage system, this company has typically worked with Canadian Solar, Tesla, and SunGrow. What's that?
The Tesla?
The Tesla, yes. And then in terms of the panels, they have typically worked with, and most recently have been sourcing from Canadian Solar. And then for the high voltage equipment, the transformers and the like, they've been working with a number of companies, GE, Siemens, Toshiba, and Hitachi.
All right, very good. Thank you, Mr. Huff. If you could present that in a written form as an addendum to the application, because I think that information is required in the application. We want to make sure it's complete and all of our I's are crossed and T's are dotted.
Absolutely, we will do that.
In that order. All right. All right, now, Mr. Poland, you are back on the witness stand, and do you understand that you took an oath to tell the truth? Do you understand that you're still under oath and you're still required to tell the truth?
I do it.
Okay, very good. All right, it's time now for questions for Mr. Poling about the sound, decibel levels, anything like that. First questions come from members of the Edgar County Board. All right, Very good, no questions? All right, then the next question comes from members of units of local government, including school districts. Ms. Keys, I'll just look right up at you, and now that we know you're an elected official, there's a target on your back. I'm kidding. I do appreciate you being here and appreciate your questions earlier. All right, then questions from Edgar County residents or folks who own ground in Edgar County. Yes, sir. Mr. Uphoff has a microphone for you, sir. All right, could you please state your name?
Zach Elton,
How do you spell your last name, Zach?
H-E-L-T-O-N.
H-E-L-T-O-N. Oh, and because there's a couple ways to spell Zach. How do you spell that?
Z-A-C-H.
Okay, because believe it or not, there's some guys who put a K at the end rather than an H. All right, then, Mr. Helton, are you from Edgar County?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. Go right ahead with your questions for Mr. Poland.
Has the construction decibels been taken into consideration at all, or is that just for operating sound levels?
Yeah, the noise study didn't look at construction noise, it was just operational noise.
Okay.
We did not study construction noise, only operational noise. That's what the state noise limits apply to.
Okay. All right, very good. Thank you for your question, Mr. Helton. Any other questions from Edgar County residents or folks who own land in Edgar County? All right, questions from folks who live outside of Edgar County? All right, questions from Edgar County staff and consultants. Mr. Kite.
I'll be brief. Mr. Poling, how did you identify the residences that needed to be modeled?
It was by reviewing aerial imagery.
And in terms of those residences, did you talk to any of those residences?
We did not.
Did you confer with any of the landowners regarding those residences?
No.
Did you confer with anyone regarding the residential use areas?
We did not.
If I'm understanding your testimony correctly, your determination of what is being part of the residential use area was solely from aerial photographs?
Correct.
And how did you go about determining which areas were residential use areas versus non-residential use areas?
Well, just in general, we modeled receptor points where we predicted sound at all residential buildings. And then for the nearest receptors where there could be a compliance issue, we also looked at the residential use areas off of the building, which was primarily based on where there's mowed lawn inside of an agricultural land.
Under the Illinois Pollution Control Board requirements, how is residential use area determined?
I'm not aware of a specific definition of that in the requirements.
So then, your determination of whether it's used as residential use area is based solely off aerial photography, and you just looked at the area that was looked
It's based off aerial photography and just generally understanding where people spend time typically in there.
So what's your definition of residential use area?
So I guess I'll say for the site, the receptor nearest to the battery storage facility, where we were looking closer at that because to confirm compliance, it was at the edge of the mowed lawn within the agricultural parcel, so within the farm.
So my question is, what's your definition of residential use?
An area where people would be potentially receiving the sound that the project is in this case.
Okay, so where a parcel might be receiving sound, are you saying limiting that to where people might actually be that might be residents there?
I would say it's more specific to where people would be using their property in a residential capacity, like enjoying time outdoors, sleeping indoors. Those are examples of residential use areas.
So you've limited the residential use where people might be spending outdoors at their residence to those areas that are above.
I'm sorry, can you say that last part again?
If I'm understanding what your testimony is, you're limiting the residential use area of those residents to just the areas that are above.
If they're within a farm field, yes, that is where we set that's where we evaluated the noise level. Yes.
What if they're not within a farm field?
It's a hypothetical for this case because we didn't do that for receptors.
Okay, so here's what I'm trying to understand.
Sure.
How do you determine where to place the receptors on the lot?
We place receptors at all occupied buildings where people would be receiving sound indoors, their residents, and then at the nearest locations exposed to the highest sound levels, also at what we could see from view of aerial photography, where the limits of the lower lawn would be, where we could be using their ground meters.
So if there's areas of the property that are not measured, you're excluding that from the residential use area.
The only area, there's only one situation here, a specific receptor, and the only area we excluded was cultivated farm.
Okay, but my question is, if you're looking at the outdoor area, the only areas you placed receptors outdoors were on those areas that are above. Is that correct?
Yes.
Were there any parcels that had areas that were not agricultural farm fields, but say had timber?
Had timber, so you said?
Correct.
Not that I recall specifically.
So if I look at the maps that have been provided in Exhibit F, are you familiar with those maps?
Exhibit F is the sound study report, is that correct?
Correct.
Yes.
You're familiar with the maps?
Yes.
All right. Did you prepare the maps or somebody else?
Yes. Myself and my team.
Who else? Who prepared these specific maps that are in the sound study report?
We have a GIS team who prepares figures based on the inputs we get.
And who are they? What are their names?
I'm trying to look at the initials here to see if I can. It would be Jordan Marty, M-A-R-T-Y, was the main person who prepared the figures.
On any of these parcels, did you place any receptors on outbuildings?
Outbuildings meaning non-residential buildings?
Correct.
We did not.
And why did you exclude those from residential use?
So the question was, why do we exclude outbuildings from residential use?
Correct.
It's my understanding of, and my experience on prior projects is you identify the occupied structures as the primary residential use area, so that's what we did for this one.
But you'll agree with me that residential use doesn't just include the house or residents when they sleep. Is that fair?
Yes, it includes more than that.
So if it includes more than the house, it could feasibly include areas such as an outbuilding where people might perform hobbies like working on a car. Is that fair?
Yes, that seems fair.
That would generally not occur in the house. You'll agree with me there, right?
Sure.
Okay. So if somebody does work on, for example, their car as a hobby, you'll agree that working on a car is part of residential use of that as a hobby. Is that fair?
I think it's fair to say yes. That's the use of somebody on their own property.
Then that would occur in an outbuilding. Is that fair? Garage,
It
barn,
could.
something like that. Okay. So, and then other things that might occur in residential use areas might be things like it might take a walk there might be trails in timber areas or something like that. Is that fair?
That would be probably more considered recreational use if it's
Is there a separate recreational use designation in the IPCD?
Not that I recall, I'd have to look closer to say for sure.
So would you agree or disagree that that would fall into the definition of residential use?
Generally, it does not. If it's an area where you just walk for recreation, it's not typically considered residential use.
What other designation would it fall under?
Recreational use.
So is there a recreational use definition within the Illinois Pollution Control Board?
As I said before, I would have to look closer at the standard. I don't recall one.
Okay. I think I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
Okay.
Very good, thank you, Mr. Kite. All right, I'm sorry, redirect examination, Mr. Uphoff.
Yeah, just briefly. So, Mr. Bowling, you had previously referenced that there were only really one location that you had to really sort of hone in on to determine whether it was going to be close to the occupant levels that are set by the Illinois Pollution Control Board standards, right?
Yes, that's right.
And that would have been the residence that was, you indicated, immediately north of the BES and substation area, is that correct?
Yes.
And when it came to that particular location, were you able to make an assessment as to where the residential, where the dwelling place on that property was in relation to any other outbuildings?
The occupied dwelling building was closer to the project, and therefore exposed to higher noise than any other outbuildings on the property.
Okay, so the location where there was the most attention given in this particular scenario, because it was the only one that was really anywhere close to the occupant levels that you were assessing, in that location, the layout of that house and outbuildings are such that the house is closest to the sound emission. Is that correct?
Correct.
So in that scenario, as I think you were trying to indicate before, none of the outbuildings would have been closer than the house.
That's correct.
So even if in that scenario you were to consider the outbuildings as a residential use, they were still further away and therefore wouldn't have been as impacted as the house. Is that correct?
Correct.
And in that scenario, did it appear to you to be more clearly defined areas that were mowed? In fact, the entire barnyard on that location was mowed such that you were using that entire area as the residential use?
Yes, that's what I recall for that specific site.
I'm not objecting, but can we just identify what receptor we're talking about?
Sure.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Was that receptor 126 in the tables? Can you check?
R126.
It's holding R26 or R126?
126.
126.
And so, Mr. Bowling, on the figures that you have here, this would be, I think, the additional maps that were provided. This is, I believe, 5 of 9 that would show a zoomed in area of where the BES and substation are, and then show the R126 receptors. Is that correct?
Yes.
And so there's actually an R126 and then an R126PL. Is that right?
That's right.
And what is PL?
PL stands for property line, abbreviation for property line.
Okay. And so in that scenario, the measurements there, as you indicated, that's where those locations were closest to the admitting source.
Correct. Yeah, the R126 PL receptor was added at the edge of the lawn, closest to the battery energy storage facility.
So for that particular measurement, you were actually measuring from the edge of the lawn? Or you indicated PL stands for property line?
Yeah, it is not technically the property line, it is the edge of the lawn, where it's between the lawn and the agricultural field.
Okay. And so then the only thing closer than that particular line is agricultural land?
Correct.
Okay. No further questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Uphoff. Final questions for this witness come from members of the Edgar County Board. Folks, questions? Mr. Farr.
that you're just talking about, which is a little over a quarter mile from the best, you said it's within the tolerable range, but still, can they hear something?
Will they be able to hear
Something.
the equipment? At times, in certain meteorological conditions, it's
Okay.
possible to hear the equipment.
All right. Okay, another question on the inverters that are in the small inverters out in the field, the solar field.
Yes.
If a residence is, say, 150 yards from one of those inverters, will they hear anything?
150 yards.
That's according to the map, it's proposed map.
Based on my experience in being at these sites and measuring sound at them, I generally do not hear the inverters at that distance.
Okay, thank you.
Is it not true that some people can hear those inverters and some people can't?
There's differences in sensitivity to noise, for sure, between different people.
All right, very good. Thank you for your questions, folks. All right, Tony, you may step down. Mr. Uphoff, call your next witness.
At this point in time, we would call Evan Malcolm.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, members of the board.
You solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give shall be true?
I do.
Very good. Go ahead, Mr. Uphoff.
Thank you. Mr. Malcolm, we're going to get your slides up here.
Let's get a spelling on it.
Oh, fair enough. Fair enough. It was going to be on the slide, but Mr. Malcolm, would you please introduce yourself and spell your name for the record?
Evan Malcolm, it's B as in boy, A-L-C-O-M-B-E.
All right, Mr. Malcolm, we're getting your slideshow up, but this is another one that we had printed out for the board so that they can follow through while we're doing that. If you could you give us a little bit of background on your qualifications and what it is that you do for a living?
Evan Malcolm with FRA, myself.
And sorry, Mr. Malcolm, can you say what FRA stands for?
Yes.
And you may need to get a little closer to the mic.
Let's try to fix this. How's that? Too loud?
No, perfect.
Can we go, so, my qualifications, 20 years.
What's FRA?
Can you go back a slide? All right. FRA is Fire Risk Alliance. FRA is an engineering firm that works on glass modeling, plume modeling, fire destructive testing on batteries. We also work on fire safety systems and suppression systems. We employ many engineers. I myself am not an engineer. I have 20 years in the fire service. Currently, I'm a captain of a fire company in New York City. I've been around fire batteries now, so working with the HAZMAT group for the last 2.5 years on battery response, our lithium-ion battery response. We had a big problem in New York City responding to scooters and other micro-mobility devices, smaller things that would transport one person. There was a rash of fires. I've been working with that group for the past 3 years on the lithium-ion battery response. I also went to CHDS, which is the Center for Homeland Defense and Security, at NPS, the Naval Postgraduate School in California, and received my master's degree. I wrote my thesis on fire department response to lithium-ion batteries and in specific electric vehicles. We looked at a segment of electric vehicle response. So my subject matter expertise is in fire response. I'm one of the lead trainers at our auto education unit, and I'm captain of the fire company. So fire response to lithium-ion battery fires. I'm not an engineer, but I also work with the engineers, and we study past failures and code.
So with that, Mr. Gaines, I would ask that Captain Malcolm be certified as an expert in fire service training with a specialty in lithium-ion battery response systems.
All right, Mr. Kite, Ms. Reeves, do you have any questions of the witness?
No objection.
No questions, no objection. All right, Captain Malcolm, I believe is an expert in the field of fire safety with respect to batteries specifically. And so he may testify as an expert witness. He'll have 30 minutes. Go ahead, Mr. Uphoff.
Thank you. And Captain Malcolm, the FRA, is that an independent organization?
yes, FRA is independent. First, I just have to, and I appreciate the recognition. I'm going to go back. Evan Malcolm here. I am not a captain here. I'm working for FRA. We are an independent third party, and none of my views here represent the views of New York City Fire Department. I can share things that we have learned there, but I have to make sure that New York City does not endorse anything, or this is my opinion, the opinion of FRA. So if it's all right, I'll go with Evan Malcolm.
All right, all we were doing was showing respect for
Thank you.
what you do, sir. But from this point forward, we'll all call you Mr. Bauer.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
Thank you, and if you could just stand just a little bit closer to the mic, you almost have to just love it.
This is interesting, yes.
That's what we were taught in broadcast school, you gotta love your microphone. Anyway.
Mr.
I
Bauer,
didn't last long in broadcasting, by the way, that's why I went to law school. Anyway, go ahead, Mr. Uphoff. Thank you.
Mr. Baucom, I appreciate that clarification, and we'll leave the captain out of it for tonight. If we could, we'll go over to your next slide then. You've given us a little bit about your background. And if you could just run through at a high level in battery storage and from your perspective and your role at FRA.
The first thing I touch on is batteries. So while we're going to talk about destruction and we're going to talk about battery failure, we could all recognize that we have 60 people in here, we probably have about 120 batteries. Myself, I carry 3 on me. Those are all lithium-ion batteries. I have a pretty good sense that my phone is not going to explode in my pocket and my laptop's not going to catch on fire. So when these batteries are treated the right way and kept within their professional or their measured thresholds, they do pretty well. So while I'm going to talk about all failures and catastrophic events, I'd just like to recognize that we do have some faith in most batteries that are name brand quality batteries. So for FRA, I do training. We do fire training for fire departments across the country who get battery energy storage systems in their area. We teach them what they're going to do or what they're not going to do if there was an incident. We use past incidents and engineering to make that plan. We also design ERPs, which are emergency response plans, and we work with the fire company on what they have in their village or their town or their city on the HMA, the hazard mitigation analysis that is planned after the battery energy storage system is planned. The HMA goes together at ERG, and we come out and we deliver that, and we do on-site teaching too. So up here, just to talk about the batteries. So I would say, like, I'm not a huge battery fan, but I'm not against them. I drive a diesel truck, but I love drills. So my Milwaukee drill I use on everything, and that's battery operated. So I have a ton of trust in my drill. If I take that battery and make that a little bit bigger, that becomes a scooter or a lawnmower or something larger like an electric vehicle. And if I upsize that one more, that becomes a battery energy storage system. So just so we're speaking the same language, I'm going to do a quick explanation of a battery energy storage system and the way it works. So if we look at the picture up there, on the left is a lithium-ion cell. That's a prismatic cell. It's a solid, square, hard-rolled cell. You take that cell and you put that inside a module and you close that module. Then the module would go into a rack. Then that rack would go into a cabinet. That container or cabinet would be 20 plus years weather protected, closed in, and with that cabinet, they add in a BMS. That's a battery management system. That is a key part to anything that uses battery. The better the battery management system, the stronger the safety is, because that can balance it out. There are a lot of things battery management systems can do. Also in there is thermal management. That is just an air conditioner that keeps those batteries at a happy level. Not too cold, not too warm. And also explosion prevention, because there have been explosions in these systems. So the explosion prevention systems are guided by 2 codes, and I'll touch on that in a second. Also, when I say lithium ion, I just like to set the stage that not all lithium ion is the same. So there's lithium batteries. Those are your non-rechargeable batteries. Something you have in a smoke detector. A lithium battery has lithium metal. Lithium metal is water reactive. Lithium ion batteries do not have lithium metal in them. They are rechargeable. It is turned the lithium into a paste. The difference is I can put water on a lithium ion battery if I had to, and I wouldn't be scared of the consequences. So most of the lithium ion batteries we know are NMC and NCA. Those are a good weight ratio, so they're lighter, they have a ton of energy. Tesla, a lot of electric vehicles use those early on. They started with the NCAs and went to NMCs. They have a ton of energy, they weigh a lot less, but their hazard profile is completely different. When I look at an LFP battery that's a lithium ion phosphate battery, it has a different hazard profile. It's a heavier battery. it still has a ton of energy, but it's not good for some type of car. When I add weight, my miles per gallon go down, or my, whatever miles per gallon be for electric. But the hazard profile, the LFP battery is much safer. So as a rule of thumb, NMC batteries, when they fail, they might give a flame front. Most of the failures we've seen in battery energy storage systems were with NMC and NCA batteries. Newer energy storage systems, pretty much everything going in now is now an LFP battery based.
And Mr. Balcom, on that point, in analyzing this particular project and in speaking with the IPA team, have you learned that the intention is to use only LFP batteries on this particular site?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So again, the site equipment, from what I just communicated to myself and our engineers, that LFP would be their choice. I don't see anybody developing a battery energy storage system now, buying new equipment and buying anything besides LFP batteries because they are that much better. The technology is light years ahead of what NCA and NMC were years ago. So there's less specific energy potential, that's just a weight ratio. Less volatility, that's been proven. Heavy metals, we hear a lot about heavy metals in these battery fires. There has been testing, and I'll talk about that, but there are no heavy metals in the construction of the LFP battery, much different from the NCA and NMC. And to touch on that battery management system, the scooters and the failures we were seeing in New York City on the smaller micromobility devices had a lot to do with very poor battery management systems. They were 10-cent devices put in a scooter that was $50, at best. And now when you talk about a battery energy storage system, that BMS, that battery management system, probably costs a lot more than one of my cars. It's more robust. There's more to it. The safety features are there. The thresholds are there. So when I compare a battery management system for a cheap scooter that I can buy at Walmart, and then I can get a replacement battery off online, these are worlds apart. The basic concept, you can see we have the battery. So on the left is that container. This container I explained before. Next to that, it goes from the container to DC energy. DC will go to the inverter converter and then hit the transformer. That takes it from when it's coming from the batteries, DC, it goes to the transformer AC, and the transformer will step it up. Then at night when it's charging at times of low use, that will then charge the batteries and do a converter, inverter. It just goes backwards. It takes it, steps it down, goes through the inverter, charges the batteries at night. But what I'm trying to highlight here is that BMS, that battery management system in the container, can be seen offline. It is monitored 24/7. There's somebody watching those cells, and a lot of these newer products, they can look down at each cell level and know the status of each cell. So when there's a cell failure or a problem inside that container, one of the first things they see is a voltage fluctuation. So you'll have a voltage jump, you have temperature rise. That battery management system can see the temperature of each individual cell, and if not, they see it for at least each module, and a module would just be a group of batteries. So explosion, that is definitely a big talking point, and everybody says, like, can this blow up my backyard? Is this gigantic? And we say, like, it's not the type of explosion that we think of. The one bad explosion that a lot of the code is based on was the McKinnon incident at Surprise, Arizona. That was Arizona Power Supply. They had the door blow open and hit 3 firemen. 2 were critically hurt. There were 4 firemen there. 2 were very badly hurt. A few were off the job. But that was the explosion. From that came these 2 codes, NFPA 68 and NFPA 69. 68 are systems that open up if there is a pressure increase inside, and 69 is a flammable gas purge system. There's a hydrogen detector that if it detects hydrogen, kicks on the fans and sucks out everything over 25% of the LEO.
And so just to go back to the NFPA 68, those vents, so the idea there is rather than the doors blowing open, these vents would release sooner so you wouldn't have that buildup and you wouldn't have the explosion through the door. At least that's the intent. Is that correct?
Yes, the doors are substantial. Like, think of a shipping container, a very structural, stable door, where those openings on top can push open. They can be perforated sheet metal. They're set down to be weather tight, but they can easily push open, I think, at a few atmospheres.
So those will release first before the door?
Yes, sir.
And then that way it creates a safer scenario if firefighters are approaching it or personnel are nearby?
And if firefighters have training, the proper training, they will not be approaching it.
They won't be
And-
trained.
And that shouldn't be happening, but this is the in case something happened, and we can't foresee what's going to happen in the future, a new failure we haven't thought of, but if there was a failure, those would release instead of the doors blowing off and possibly injuring somebody. And also with the gas purge system, a lot of these systems have combination systems where they have both the 68 and 69, and that seems to be the trend in the industry now, having both of those safety systems.
And is it your understanding that the batteries that are going to be proposed for the state line energy system are going to have both 68 and 69?
Yes, sir.
Apply? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Very good.
So Moss Landing, if you Google, I don't like lithium-ion batteries or battery energy storage, this will come up. And if you look into failures, this is the most recent critical failure. This is what we consider an absolute critical failure of a battery energy storage system. But when we compare Moss Landing to a containerized system, these are apple and oranges. Moss Landing was designed before NFPA 855. That guides the way these are built. A containerized system will keep batteries in a smaller area, so you can't have a succession of batteries catching on fire. Also, the way they're built with passive suppression, the battery fire should not leave the specific module that it's in. This was the complete opposite. You picture, let's say, this gymnasium or like a Home Depot, and we put rows of batteries, 700 plus feet by 75 feet wide, and we could put racks and racks of batteries. I happened to be in discussions talking about code and what we should do when we have all these batteries, and it was considered a good idea still in 2021 to put sprinklers in the area. So if sprinklers are in here and you have one battery catch on fire, the sprinkler goes off and sprays the other batteries with water, then they catch on fire. And this ended up being a full catastrophic failure of the entire Moss Landing area, which is very different from a containerized system. Containerized systems are engineered not to leave the container. So intervention, if intervention is planned, we take that engineering into consideration, and water would be used to prevent extension. The cabinet that is on fire would be considered a loss, and it is designed to contain that fire only within that cabinet. So the cabinet can be 9 by 26 feet, it can be up to 53 feet in some shipping container. That container itself will fail, and there are prevention systems to minimize that and keep it to a very small portion of the container, but it should not jump from container to container. But if you could think of some reason, like something that hasn't happened yet, like a strong wind, or not too strong a wind, but just enough wind, and the fire comes out one side of it and starts heating up another container, that would be the only intervention that FRA would recommend, that we cool the exposed containers. And we have seen examples of this where, in the picture above, water is being applied to the exposed container, and a lot of times this is done now as a preventative measure, not even because the data supports it. So for intervention, we usually say there are 3 points. We can watch self-temp alarms in the adjoining containers. We can watch the heat signature on the outside with a thermal imaging camera, or we can just see that it's heating up. Any of those things, you could apply water to the outside of the adjoining containers, and you're pretty much spraying water at the outside of a shipping container. So we're not worried about any issues there.
So if I could ask a couple of quick follow-ups on that. So the container that catches, if it was to catch fires, that's going to be used and considered a loss. So you're just going to let that burn itself out, is that correct?
From my standpoint, yes, and from what we understand from the industry, that any container that has a fire in it and the rest of the containers affected, most of those have to be taken out and checked. It's going to be swapped out. That is not a container that's going to be reused. They're going to switch that out. They're going to take the stuff off site, and a new container will come in.
So FRA's recommendations would be to not make any attempt to try to save that container while the active fire is occurring. Is that correct?
Correct.
Right. And then you're just playing sort of defense with the other containers, monitoring them, making sure they're not getting too hot, and if they are, then potentially using some water to try to cool them on the exterior.
Agreed.
Okay. Thank you.
So the metaphor I like, if you have a battery burning inside a good weather-sealed container, would be a pizza box on fire inside of an oven. And we have this all the time. Fire departments respond to somebody turn the oven on, they forgot the pizza in there. Now, if I don't open the oven and I spray the outside of the oven with water, I'm not really going to put that pizza box out. But that oven was designed to withhold that. So it shouldn't extend out. You might have smoke coming out of there, some things that are going to come out of that oven. But the idea of spraying water on the outside of that oven to put that pizza box out doesn't really make sense. Or if there was an oven next to it, we might want to protect that one because smoke and heat didn't come out. So it's just the best metaphor I have is to try to put it in perspective. So to speak of the way they're designed, UL 9540A is required by NFPA 855. So when these containers are built, they are tested. It is destructive testing, and this is one of the more fun things I think, the better things we get to do at FRA is we will light a cell on fire, then we will make sure a module catches on fire, and it is contained inside that module. But now UL 9540A makes it become a unit level test, where the entire module is lit on fire inside the unit, and it has to show that it doesn't propagate, which means extend outside of that module, so the module is around it, and that is the test. And then there's an installation level test. So these will be done by any system going in the US. This is done at some level where you're having cell, module, unit, and then installation level test. And that's done in a laboratory. They also have wind, it can be done outside. But these are tested to make sure that they're not spreading from container to container. So we always talk about what comes off of it, and I like to say plume behavior. If you look at the plume there, the 90% of the constituents of that fire, from lithium-ion battery fire or LFP fire, are going to be hydrogen, carbon monoxide, and carbon dioxide. Those will go up and back into the atmosphere and dissipate very quickly. So we have yet to see an evacuation take place that was based on the data taken and the metering taken on the site. So the plume modeling is usually up in the air. It's going right up into the atmosphere and dissipating. So if we're at that fence line at 100 feet away, taking meter readings, that's what I make my decision on. And I'm not going to say it can't happen, so we always tell fire departments where we start and where we work our way back to. And we're going to start at our nearest exposure that we're worried about. We're going to take readings. If the majority of that smoke is hydrogen, that's not picking up at my nearest residence or exposure that I'm worried about, I'm pretty sure I don't have the other things in that smoke. And we work our way back to the fence line, and we always say 100-foot exclusion zones is what we like to work with for safety. So environmental impact, and I'm looking at this from a fire department point of view, but there's a lot of information out there, and you have to be careful what you listen to. So we try to find stuff that's produced by third parties, non-biased third parties, government reports, things that are done that aren't just a story, that really tell the facts of it. So we try to highlight what we have here, and I put a QR code. So what I'm talking about, you can also look up by checking that QR code. It brings you exactly to the report I'm talking about. But this is the Escondido fire, and it shows minimal contamination, water contamination next to the site. And when you read that, there's almost nothing in the water. When they test the water on the site, in the site, there was nothing from the runoff from the Escondido fire. Again, you have a battery system that's inside a container, and you're putting water on the outside of the container. Any remediation that takes place on site is dealt with by the owner of that site. But off the site, we have yet to see anything leaving the site. If we think about a container fire, so containerized best versus like an industrial fire, these are very different fires. So for plume, smoke, runoff, if I have something contained in the container inside a yard, it's much easier for a fire department to deal with, especially if there's no extension. Where the industrial fire can be a much worse scenario. And again, Moss Landing soil samples. This report, I think there's an error on, this is actually the Moss Landing page. So the next page, I think I have a QR code for that. There were 118 soil samples taken from around Moss Landing. I believe the error on this page, it says 108 samples, but there were 118 soil samples taken around Moss Landing. They came back, initially there were concerns that there were heavy metals, but out of the 118, it came back that there were only 10 that were questionable, and of those 10, it was lead, and other metals were read deeper in the soil, but not on top of the soil, so they realized that couldn't have come from the batteries. And those were also the NCA, NMC batteries that aren't safe with the LFPs. And here's the soil sample test, the Moss results, Moss Landing results by TerraPhase. The conclusions on page 9. I just tried to highlight a few things. Usually this is more of a conversation, and I usually come up and instead of opining about batteries, I answer questions and try to give perspective on it. So, thank you very much.
Then if we go to, you referenced there's another incident review here, but maybe we can skip past that and go to your last slide that you've got in terms of what you've been doing here locally in relation to this project.
apology, I mixed the slides up. So if I go back to Otay Mesa, there was 6 million gallons of water that was contained, and all the water was tested by EPA Region 9 and allowed for release for dust control in the area. So fire department training, we have that with the local fire departments here. We were here, we completed our first training on April 10th of 2025. The training will come back before the site is operational. NFPA 855 requires that we do training on site with the local fire departments, so they understand how the site is laid out and they understand the emergency response plan and what their response would be or wouldn't be to an event on site. Annual training is recommended or required by 855 if the fire department wants it, and FRA is always available as an on-demand resource if needed.
So again, in conclusion, after talking about the different systems here and how those lay out, but getting more project specific, you've already started some training with the local departments, right?
Yes, sir.
And you've already got plans to work on preparing those emergency response guides, is that correct?
I think that it's emergency response plans.
Okay.
I know the emergency response guides are, but yeah, it's emergency response plans for this. The emergency response plans are paid for by IPA, developed by FRA after there's an HMA and we know what the site is, and then it's developed with the fire department's tools in mind. Things aren't listed that the fire department can't do.
So you'll be staying involved and continuing to help with providing insight and helping guide those plans, and then with the additional training down the road.
Myself or somebody from FRA, but sure, we have lots of good training with FRA.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
All right, very good. Thank you, Mr. Uphoff. And Mr. Falcon, thank you for your testimony. Now it's time for questions for this witness. First, come from members of the Edgar County Board. Yes, Ms. Ellis. You want to just grab the microphone out of the, for lack of a better word, from the thing. Go right ahead, ma'am.
I know in our ordinance it states that APIT is responsible for any materials or training supplies that the fire department or emergency services need. So have those been identified?
Yes, ma'am. With the fire department, at this time, it is the emergency response plan that would be designed for the site, the training that is in-house and on-site training with the local fire departments. Other than that, I don't know if there's anything else with them. That's not, I don't think that'd be a question for me. Nothing's been identified to us, and the common thing is just the emergency response plan and the future trainings on site. Sometimes we walk on site and you will see something, like we did a training in Arizona, and it was noticed that the box, the Knox box that was spoken of before was green. It was the same color as something else, and they wanted it painted red, and that was an easy fix. So sometimes these come as the trainings are done, but usually it's pretty standard.
Thank you.
Any other questions for members of the county board?
I sat through the training back in April, and the information that you guys gave to the fire department was very good, because they had no idea what to expect. So it helped relieve some of their apprehension and stuff. And Ian said that they would come back and do more training. And if there's any equipment needed by the fire department, that would be supplied. You know, I was talking to the fire chief the other day, and he said, well, when they put these panels up and someone gets hurt out there, how are we going to, you can't drive a fire truck down there. So he said, you know, we might need a side-by-side or something to get to someone being hurt. The batteries, that's their big concern, but I think that was addressed when you had the training back this April. You know, basically he said, just back off. You know, you're not going to put the fire out, and it's self-contained. So I think with further training, it'll be good. I think they feel comfortable with what you guys have proposed for the future for their training and everything. And they said they appreciated it, you doing that.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Farner, for your comment. Any other questions for this witness from members of the county board? Questions from members of units of local government, including school districts? Interested parties? Residents of Edgar County with questions, or if you're a property owner in Edgar County, questions for this witness regarding his testimony. Folks who live outside of Edgar County, questions. County Staff and Consultants, Mr. Kite, Ms. Reeves.
Very briefly, if I understand you correctly, your recommendation would be that the batteries that be used to be an LFP battery, is that correct?
That is the industry trend. I believe they are safer. They have a different hazard profile. The research recently leans towards LFP batteries being a safer battery.
Of any of the, strike that, of any of the battery manufacturers that they've proposed here during the break, of any of those battery manufacturers, are you aware of any of those battery systems catching fire?
Yes, sir.
About, of any of those that are LFP systems, are you aware of any of those catching fire?
No, sir. It was, if I could just specify, there were a few Tesla MP1s, which is a Megapack 1. Those were not LFP. Those were earlier iterations of their cells and technology they had between the MP1. Now they're on to the MP2, and soon I think if you purchase now you'll be at the MP3, which is a Megapack. So the 2s and 3s, they're not currently building them, from my knowledge, with NMC or NCA anymore.
Understood. That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Very good. Thank you, Mr. Kite. Redirect examination. Mr. Uphoff?
No further questions.
Okay, very good. Final questions come from members of the county board. All right. Thank you very much. All right. Mr. Falcon, you may step down. Thank you. Call your next.
At this time, we will call Dr. Chris Olson.
Mr. Uphoff, after Dr. Olson, you have 2 more.
We do, but we can reassess where we're at.
Yep. And I want to hear from a gentleman in here who has some ground that this may go on. He's been here all night, and so all I remember is his name is Mike, and I want to hear from him. All right. Dr. Olson, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth?
I do.
And could you state your name for the record, spelling first and last?
It's Christopher, spelled Christopher, Olson, Ollson.
All right, Mr. Uphoff, your witness.
Thank you. Dr. Olson, we are getting your slideshow up on the screen here, and this is also a slide deck that's been printed out and provided to the board, so they'll be able to follow through there at their desk. But if you could, off the top of your head, I know you don't have it in front of you, can you walk through some of your qualifications for your position?
Yes, I have it in front of me here. And so, good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board, staff, and members of the public. So again, my name is Dr. Chris Olson. I have a PhD or doctorate in environmental health sciences from the Royal Military College of Canada. You may hear some A's and some of the boots thrown in. I live outside of Toronto, Canada, but I spend a lot of time here in Illinois and across the Midwest. So again, I've got about 25 years of experience in public health and safety and consulting. Of that, the last 15 years in the renewable energy systems space, wind turbines, solar projects, and then since about 2018 in the battery energy storage system realm. I'm also an adjunct professor at the University of Toronto, teach a graduate level course. I've testified in front of numerous commissions, county commissions like this, state level commissions. This would be, I believe, my 5th or 6th Illinois hearing. I typically do somewhere in the neighborhood of about 20 of these types of hearings in a year. In addition to that, not only do I work for developers, I've done work for both counties like yourselves when developing ordinances. I've also worked for I was the consultant record for the state of Vermont when they were developing the wind guidance, and I've testified before Senate committees in Kansas, North Dakota, and Indiana, to name a few.
And, well, I guess, based on those qualifications, Mr. Keynes, I would ask that. Actually, let me ask a couple of follow-ups. Dr. Olson, you've got experience in a range of environmental health issues. You also have some specialized qualifications as it relates to sound.
I do. So a lot of the work that I do is, we take the acquisition, so Mr. Rollins, when he does his work, he turns it over to us, the health side, to answer some of those questions about what is an appropriate sound level. I'm certainly very familiar with the IPCB standard here in the state of Illinois.
And you've also been a part of some of the rule-setting groups that establish some of these international standards for sound as it relates to certain types of renewable energy projects. Is that fair?
That's correct. So I was involved in, some of the expert panel committee for the ANSI, the American National Standards Institute sound modeling guidance for wind turbines, for example, it was published in 2022.
All right. So with that, Mr. Keynes, I would ask that Dr. Olson be certified as an expert in public health and safety with a special emphasis or special service in the area of sound as well.
Mr. Kite, any objection? I have heard Dr. Olson testify on several occasions. I've determined that he is qualified as an expert witness on those occasions, and he will also be certified as an expert in this hearing, and so he will have 30 minutes to present his direct testimony. He's in as an expert.
Thank you. And Dr. Olson, is the clicker working over there now?
It is, I believe so.
Okay. Well, then if you could start walking us through your slideshow here and tell us about how you conducted your review for this particular project.
Sure. Like with any project, the first contact comes through the company asking me if I would be involved in the hearing. So the first thing I have to do is sit down and look at your folks' county ordinance. And of course, your county ordinance for solar as it relates to the solar project is aligned with the state requirements. So go through your ordinance to make sure that as I'm reviewing their application, that did that meet their requirement or your requirements as well as the state's. So I've reviewed your county ordinance. I reviewed the application in detail as it relates to public health, safety, and welfare. For example, the overall site plan and noise study. For the court reporter, I have a tendency to go fast, so you can slow me down and be like, yeah, okay, every hearing. Okay, so then, of course, some of the other standards, we're looking at the Illinois overarching guidance for wind and solar projects in the state of Illinois, peer-reviewed scientific articles. So what my role in these types of projects is, you've heard from the acquisition, you've heard from Mr. Balcom on the fire side, protection of firefighters and that, and the setback distances that, and I would really try to take all of that information, pull it together, and it's really looking at trying to address your hearing factor number one, which requires the establishment, maintenance, or operation of a commercial solar energy facility will not be detrimental to or endanger the public health, safety, morals, comfort, or general welfare. So that's really what we're going to try to go through in the next, hopefully a little less than half an hour. So if we kind of move to the expert, I'm going to deal with the solar project first, and then we'll come to the battery storage after. And back to Ms. Keys, some of your questions. Hopefully I can address most of it while we're going, but happy to answer. So how do we know whether or not solar projects are safe? What's a properly sited solar project? Relatively new to Illinois. Here, it's like large-scale solar projects, but certainly we've been in operation well over 20 years. If you look at Arizona, you look at parts of California. In fact, if you look at North Carolina was one of the first states to really get into large-scale solar projects. So, you don't have to just believe what I'm telling you tonight. These are some of the documents that I have up here for you. Health and safety impacts of solar photovoltaics. Sorry, that was done by North Carolina State. That document is 2017. If we kind of move across, there's other documents from Massachusetts were dated in 2015. Ohio's Department of Health just recently in 2022 came out with the document, and the one on the far right again is from the early 2010s. So we've got a lot of research and study. We know quite a bit about solar projects and other properties. Some of the issues that come up that we'll address tonight are things like electromagnetic fields, or EMF coming from solar projects, the associated transmission lines, and potentially battery storage facilities, leaching of metals or other chemicals that are embedded in the panels themselves can impact groundwater. They can impact the soil. We're going to talk about glare, even though your ordinance doesn't require glare analysis. I'll speak on glare. Noise, of course, that will just briefly go over that. So the first topic is EMF and the electromagnetic fields. Everything in this room is plugged in. This microphone, my computer, all the wires that are hanging on the floor, the lights, anything plugged in is going to emit EMF. The way that we measure EMF is in a unit called milligauss, or energy. And so if I was to walk around, it actually, those old Star Trek camcorder things that you walk around, the Spocks walk around and measure and stuff, they kind of look like that. So if I was to walk around the room, if I come really close to this microphone, I'm going to be about 10, 20 milligauss or mg. I go near my computer, probably 100, 150. If you're in your home and the microwave in your home, it's gonna be 400, 500. For those of you that still have hair, your hair dryer is about 700, okay? So we're exposed to EMF all the time. And when we look at, what is an international standard? So I'm kind of talking about the low 10s, 20s, and then up towards the low mid hundreds. The sort of international standard is sort of 2,000. Okay, so we're well below that in our daily lives. Even if you stand under the big 345 kV lines, like really big power lines, you're only talking about 70, 80 milliwatts even under those. So how does that relate to our panels here in the solar company? So we've certainly done a lot of work and research on personally measured EMF around solar panels themselves, the wiring, the inverters, and then the substations and the like. And really what you're getting is you may find a little bit of elevated, like sort of in the 10s, maybe even up to like the low hundreds if you're standing right beside the substation, but well below that international standard. And so at the fence line of these projects, we know we're back in background. Background, so typical background if you're in your home, if I'm not standing right, but if I was standing over there and not right beside this equipment, typical level in a US home is going to be about 4 milliwatts. We get to the fence, four, F-O-U-R, sorry, apologize, typically about 4. And so if I was to stand over the corner and have that, if you're in your home, you weren't standing right beside your television, it would be about 4. When we get to the fence line of these solar projects, the substation line, that's what we're really into, we're back in the background. So how do we know that this is going to be safe? So the quote that I have up here is from Dr. Winkfield, who is a board certified radiologist and oncologist. So she's a cancer doctor that specializes in exposure to EMF. You'll see from the quote there that the levels from a solar project or battery storage project are simply not high enough to cause impacts or health concerns. The next one that we'll kind of go through is metals in the solar panel. So yeah, certainly there are metals, both the panels themselves, very trace level of the panels. You have metals in obviously the wiring, you have cabling and the like, but they're embedded in the panels. So at the bottom right hand, it's sort of that slide, right? Basically silicon. There's glass panels, right? And then even within, I've got my cell phone here, right? There's a lot more concentrated metals and other chemicals in the cell phone, including in the glass, than there are in the panels that we're talking about here. We've all broken our cell phones. We've all broken the kit. They're so much better now. Talking about improved codes and standards, right? I don't know about you guys, but like used to be I'd look at my phone and break and shatter. But we still can walk around that safely in our pockets. So eventually we get a new one and fixed. Same thing with the solar panels. So all of this material is embedded or encased within the panels. It's in the material itself. And then let's say a panel was damaged. Let's say a hailstorm. So we're asked about tornadoes and hail. I'll talk a little bit about that. Even if they're damaged in the panels, there's nothing that's going to leach out of those panels. Now, those panels get replaced very quickly, but even if they were to sit there for a long period of time damaged, even with rain or snow or the like and then melt off there, there's nothing going to come out of those panels and get into the soil and then into groundwater. The other one that gets raised as a concern is the I-beams. The beams are going to be driven in, piles like either driven or screwed in. Mr. Knight indicated is that they are typically, they're just galvanized steel, right? And if you just drive down the highway, there's galvanized steel everywhere, right? And barriers. I'm sure if I was to drive around Paris here, there's chain link fences, not galvanized steel. You have a small amount of zinc that may leach from there right into the adjacent soil. It's not impacting the groundwater. And in fact, any of you that take a multivitamin, you got 10,000 times more zinc in that multivitamin than you would ever have from an exposure or something like this. So overall, panels don't leach. They're not going to impact soil groundwater. We're not going to have an issue from that perspective. Another question that was raised was, what about construction noise? And it's true, it's not regulated. Construction noise is not regulated under the IEC standard. That said, oops, right? Oh, I skipped ahead on mine. Sorry, let's do glare first. So if we talk about glare, so you'll hear that there's glare on the panels. There is a program that can be used to determine how much glare, what time of the year, and everything else. In my opinion, that model is not useful. It shouldn't be used for things like roadways. It just happened to be, it was developed for the FAA for pilots at the flight path where, if you're at the Chicago airport, there's solar panels around the airport itself. A lot of airports are now putting in solar installations because they're you've got just all this dead space land around them, would there be enough glare coming off the panels to impact the pilots as they're flying in? That used to be part of the FAA regulation. It is no longer actually part of the regulation because the pilots, the FAA realized there's far more glare and intensity of glare off the buildings at the airport, off the actual asphalt of the runway, than there is off the panels. Where you still have to do it though is for the air control towers, so that folks up at the air control tower, you still have to do glare analysis for that. You folks don't require it as part of your ordinance. In fact, I don't think that's a bad thing, because I think the model can be it's not very good. But at the end of the day, that thermometer that's on your slide on the screen, 100% very top of that thermometer is if you're staring directly at the sun. So you know when you stare directly, told not to do it as a kid, but you do it anyway. You gotta try it once. You stare at the sun, and you look away, and you get the kind of afterglow in your eyes, you can't really see very well. That's the kind of glare we're worried about. As you kind of go down through this, if you're driving around in the winter time, and you don't have sunglasses on, just the glare off the snow is around kind of 80% of what it is looking at the sun. Vegetation a little bit further down, you see solar panels right at the bottom there, about 2%. So the glare that you get, the way I kind of describe it, you know when you're driving around a certain time of day, the car ahead of you, you've got that really bad glare off of their back windshield, whatever. Sometimes that can be a little bright, that's far better than this. So I don't think you're gonna have to worry about glare from the solar project. Okay, now I'll come to sound. So there's a question about construction sound. So again, IPCB does not regulate construction sound. That being said, it is a construction project. It's called a spade. I think Mr. Kite was asking about screw-in, as opposed to hammer or push drive. Push drive panels, when you put them in, the piles, that pile driving, if you're standing right beside it, it's going to be somewhere in the 80 to 100 range. Now to put that in perspective, if you drive around your tractor, you're standing right beside the tractor while it's out of it, it's going to be at about 80 to 100 range. So there will be some time, you're going to have equipment moving around, you're going to have piles being driven. It's going to be a construction project. That said, it's not over the whole 1,900 acres throughout the 18 months or whatever it's going to take to build. They're going to be moving around in sections, right? So yes, if you're by that section for a brief period of time and you're a resident, the other thing is construction happens during daytime, right? So we're not disturbing people at night and all of that. So it can be noisy. It's not going to pose a public health risk. It can be a nuisance for a little bit, but that moves on very quickly because it's like any other construction. If you're going to build a barn, you're going to have noise. We were talking about with the acoustician, during the operations, the sound levels are going to meet the IPCB standards. And Mr. Kite, to your point, I did drive the project area today. I was able to go see receptor 126, saw where they actually placed where the house was. We placed this. IPCB is a bit of a mess because it doesn't really define some of this stuff. Where exactly should the receptor be? At nighttime, we basically put the receptor at the house because we're worried about the sound level to make sure that people are going to hear a good night's sleep. That is what the standard was designed for. The daytime standard, which is 10 decibels higher, is really meant for continued enjoyment and use of your property. And so when you look at the receptor 126, I believe it's called 126A, they literally put the receptor to make sure there's still going to be a compliance. I think it was called property line, but really it was the area closest to where the agricultural field starts. And I think that is appropriate. If you look at the other receptors, if you look at the contour lines, whether it's the field, the grass area, or the other buildings, it all falls within that compliance. So I think we're good from that standpoint. So just before I get to the overall conclusions, there's some questions about tornadoes will come down to the battery storage side. Solar panels are designed, these panels are going to go another, you heard from Mr. Falcon talk about the UL standard or underwriters of the laboratory standard. There is such a standard for this. There is an underwriters laboratory standard or UL standard for the design of solar panels. They can withstand up to 140 mile per hour winds. If there's a tornado that strikes and goes through the path of the solar project, it is going to take out panels, just like it is going to take out a barn, just like it's going to take out other buildings. And in fact, it's probably the least of your worries that it's going through the solar project, but it can cause damage, right? Like a high speed tornado is going to cause damage to the solar. It will not the battery storage, but the solar could. And it also can withstand hail. So it withstands very sizable chunks, 1 to 4 inch chunks of hail. That said, there are hail chunks that are 10 inches big, and we've seen those in some limited projects happen damage. Again, nothing would leach out of the panels, everything's going to be fine. So the overall conclusion that I reached on the solar project is that it complies with all the public health and safety aspects of your ordinance and the state requirements, properly cited so it's not going to have a detrimental effect on the local residents nearby. Board member, to one of your questions about the inverters, the nice thing is about the way that the solar projects, these large-scale solar projects are designed, the inverters are all on the interior for the solar project, on the interior of the project. So in fact, very rarely, if ever, would you hear it at the fence line because they really are in the interior. So it really is the battery storage is going to be a lot of it. Going to be good there. You get EMF, glare, sound, and panel. It's all will be fine. And so, very briefly on the fire side, solar projects themselves do not really catch fire. But you can, if it's improperly wired, you can get a short in the wiring, but then it can cause a grass fire, or one of the inverters or transformers can catch. They're pretty rare. What typically will happen is that, in fact, you have an offsite grass fire or crop fire that then spreads towards the solar project. The panels themselves don't burn, they melt, essentially. There's nothing off-gassing or toxic from those panels. And again, it's something with FRA that would be, not just the battery storage, but the fire department. You basically cut into the fire. They're not asked to save the equipment. And really what the fire department's going to be doing under their emergency response plan is just bringing it to make sure that if there was on the solar project, it doesn't spread off the project. So that's the solar side, and then quickly I'll touch on some of the battery energy storage system. So really when it comes to public health and safety on the battery storage, what we're really looking at is setbacks to neighboring properties, sound emissions from the facility, and then of course fire that Mr. Duncan took you through. The one thing that is important with battery energy storage systems, and Mr. Duncan can tell you being a New York City fire chief, is that these systems are often placed right in the heart of town. So if you're downtown in New York City or you're Long Island, you may have literally a daycare across the road from one of these facilities. The Escondido fire that he was talking about is in the heart of a commercial district, not a heavy commercial, but a commercial district in Escondido, California. So the safety standards have improved. We look at setbacks, your setbacks, the setbacks that they use to design the battery storage facility are far greater than we can see from other areas. The closest battery storage facility to a neighboring non-participating property line, it was 100 feet, and 1,300 feet, you've heard, a quarter mile to that nearest center is just north of, we're referring to as receptor 126. I hate to refer to them as the number, but that's what the noise guys have to do. So these setbacks are going to ensure sound, EMF, fire issues are not going to cause harm to health. With respect to tornado, these things are heavy. They are bolted down to the concrete pad. It is highly unlikely even during a tornado strike it's going to pick one of these things up and carry it away. You're not going to have batteries scattered all over the area. And so really, again, at least the worry in a tornado, even a high-speed tornado in this area, the battery storage project is not going to be the thing that's going to be blown around. So sound, again, briefly, we just touched on it. I'm not going to go through this too much, other than to say that, having reviewed the sound report, they did it correctly. They followed the proper standards for doing it. It does meet the IPCC standard. And the nighttime level of 45, that's really the number we're looking for. We want to make sure that number was designed in the 1970s and still carries true to this day. That sound level is a low level of sound. It's very consistent with other states surrounding you that have state level siting, just like you do. And so we're going to be okay on public health safety welfare for that. One of the things that, as Mr. Duncan took you through on the battery storage fires, really the first code was in 2020. NFPA started in 2020. Learned a lot more since then, and ultimately we're getting to the point where the new NFPA 2026 version is now out and active. That's what they're going to have to comply with when they design the site. This graph looks a little bit convoluted, but essentially what it is, the orange line that starts up to the top left was in 2018, sort of the percentage of fires based on the installed capacity. The light blue sort of that goes up from the bottom left to the top right. That's the installed capacity around the world. The bars are the number of fires from around the world. And you can see that the fire incidence rate has come way down. We only had 8 fires around the world in 2024 in one of these containers. Ultimately, the probability of the odds of one of these containers catching fire in any given year is 1 in 10,000. it's a very low probability, way lower than a house fire, transformer fire, and some of the others. So from the codes and standards approved, as Mr. Falcon told you, and so then just quickly, again, touching on the air quality issue, why did Mr. Falcon say that we don't need to evacuate around the area? As he said, he could have his firefighters staged without supplied air 100 feet away from the on fire container. They have the gas detectors, they've got their handheld meters. It's always going to be the incident commander's call. But ultimately, even if we looked at the insanely big fire at Moss Landing, which is not anywhere near like this, but the US EPA was out there, the Escondido fire, they were out there. All of these fires, they've had the testing done. And you can see the EPA rarely makes statements about health and safety after an incident like this, but they came out and said that there was no risk to public health throughout that fire. So that's how we've got good confidence that your residents, even that residents a quarter mile to the north, if there happened to be a fire that was blowing that direction, even that resident wouldn't have to evacuate. So my overall conclusion, what I would put to you board members, is that the State Clean Energy Center is safe for everyone.
Billy Brennan.
All right, very good. Thank you, Dr. Olson. All right, questions for Dr. Olson first come from members of the Edgar County Board.
You may be the wrong person to talk to, Dr. Olson, but I wanted to know about ambient temperatures and how the health issues that they affect with the heat island that it creates.
You came to the right place, Mr. Chair. I actually had a slide on it, but I took it out. I wasn't sure it was going to come up. I should have put it back up there. But here's what I can tell you about the heat island effect. So again, the panels are designed such that you're going to absorb that energy, the heat energy, right? And that's what's been being transferred to electricity. There were a couple of studies, one primary study back in, I believe it was 2018 in Arizona, where they had a small solar project where they were trying to measure the temperature just above the panels and then just off the panels, and whether or not it cooled down at night. And what you saw was about a 5-degree temperature difference above the panels themselves. But when you got very close to just the fence line of that facility, it back to ambient. So what we see there is if you're standing, it's the way I always describe this, if you're, if you have one of those days where it's 100 degrees out and you're standing in your local grocery store parking lot, you know how if you're standing there, I always like to say the Walmart's because those parking lots are so big, but if you're standing in that Walmart parking lot on a 100-degree day, it is literally feeling like 110 degrees, literally above you because of the parking lot. If you step off of that asphalt and just even a couple of feet, that temperature decrease goes back to ambient very quick. There's no impact on, again, with the, considerable number of projects out there, all more or less in agricultural areas in the Midwest, right? If you're in Arizona, you're in the desert. But in the Midwest, there's no damage to crops, there's no issue on wildlife or anything else, it's just off the property. So you might have, there's other studies that said there was no temperature increase. So at the end of the day, even if there is a slight temperature increase, it's certainly not anything that would cause concern for the local wildlife, the crops, or anything adjacent.
Any other questions from members of the board? All right, questions from members of units of local government, including school districts. Ms. Keys.
And I'd like to say Ms. Keys did the right thing by public health and safety walking down the stairs and coming around.
Go right ahead, ma'am.
Okay. Just to follow up on the studies. So the most recent study was 2022, I think.
Of the one that I put up there, yes.
Yeah, those four. Did it include is it LFP, lithium, iron, and phosphate?
So the ones that I put up there, those are the solar ones. The studies that we have in the batteries are more what we call the UL, those 9450A testing, where they purposely catch the batteries on fire, the container on fire. And what we do is we do a lot of testing of the air quality. So there's test facilities, there's one in Ohio, just down the road, where you test the air quality as the container's on fire. So they have to catch the entire container on fire now. You've got to let it burn out, typically 4 to 8. So FOURTO 8, 48 hours. So it takes about 48 hours for it to burn out. And we've got a lot of extensive testing in the air quality where there have been real fires with LFP batteries. So there have been a handful of LFP battery fires as well in the world. But all of that testing is done so that we know that the public is going to be safe.
Okay. And so So the EMF would come off of the panels?
So-
Or off the batteries?
The EMF doesn't come off the panels, so let's do solar first. So the EMF comes off the inverters and then the substation. So those are the things that convert, so we've got power in the panels and the batteries. It's a DC power or direct current power, and it has to be converted to AC power with the stuff that's all around us here. They're called inverters that change the power. That's where you get if I was standing right, the inverter's like here, and I'm standing right beside it, I've been measuring the low 10s, maybe up to 50 or so milligauss of that energy. When I I don't have to go very far away, and it drops back in the background floor. So that's really where the EMF comes from, for those, as well as the electrical cabling, that's all underground for these sites. For the battery storage, again, it's DC, but you actually aren't getting really any EMF around the containers themselves. Again, it's around the inverters and the substation, very similar. And so we've got a lot of measurements around those. And again, like I say, when you get to the fence line, you're really at background levels. So and well below the level that would be posing risk to the workers that are there every day.
Okay, so the fence line, what was that level? Because you said 2,000 milligauss.
So 2,000 is the standard. We're going to be down around 4 or less.
4.
Or 1 or even less than 1, depending on where they've got those inverters and where the batteries are.
And those EMF studies, which I think those are the studies that you were talking about, the EMF studies, those original 4 studies, were those over long spans of time that they were looking at health risks, like 10 years?
Yeah, so EMF is actually like the actual study or the science behind what health risk EMF is. It's actually one of the most studied environmental health issues ever. There's over 25,000 research articles on the potential health effects from EMF. So we know what the level is. It's that 2,000 level that we want to stay below. That's based on it's based on now 70 years of research and over 20,000 papers. So what we do is when we go out and measure, in this case, a solar project or battery storage, you don't have to measure it over a long period of time. You measure over a relatively short period of time because you're up and under worst case conditions. And that's how we know that we're below that 2,000 level. Those studies at the 2,000 level, those are people living around high voltage power lines for 50, 60, 80 years. It's the kids living near power lines. It's people, all the different studies. So we use that data to figure out what the bad level is, and that's 2,000. And then when we go to measure these things, if we're down around 4, 5, 10, that's how we know they're reasonably safe.
Okay. And then also with the metals, you said the metals are minimal in the soil.
That's right.
Do you know, or what are the studies saying that? Does it change the topsoil? So whenever things are taken out, does it completely change how the ground is?
So the studies that have been done, and I don't know if you have another expert that's going to be talking about agricultural land. I'm going to want a little bit outside of my expertise on this, with allowance from Mr. Keynes. Having worked with a number of they're called agrologists, so people who study soil science. Essentially, what you're doing is you're taking a solar project and you're making that field fallow or like not cropped for 20, 30 years. And what you're planting is a soil grass mix, seed mix, that is then going to basically rejuvenate the soil. So when you look at things like if you put land into CRP, thank you. So basically if you're a farmer, you want to take some of your, or landowner, you want to take some of that and put it into CRP land, basically meaning you can't farm it. We have a lot of studies over 20, 30 years of people having land in CRP. The soil health is much better than it was when it started. And it's similar, you're not putting pesticides and herbicides on in any good quantity. You're not adding fertilizer and everything else. So the soil is actually naturally regenerating. And when the company goes back to doing their decommissioning, they pull the piles out and everything else, that's why you get this claim that the soil would be as good, if not better, than it was for farming, if they want to return the land to farming at that point.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for the questions.
Thank you, Ms. Keys. Any other questions from members of units of local government, including school districts? Interested parties, folks from Edgar County or who own ground in Edgar County. Any questions for Dr. Olson? Non-interested parties, folks from outside of Edgar County. Edgar County Staffing Consultants, Mr. Kite, Ms. Reeves.
No questions.
And redirect examination, Mr. Uphoff.
No.
And final questions for the witness come from members of the Edgar County Board. All right, very good. Thank you, Dr. Olson.
Thanks very much, folks.
Thank you.
Now you can head back to Ontario or wherever.
Actually, it's Montana next, but thank you.
The hardest working man in the renewable energy business. That's not true. There's some others who are working just as hard. Now, it's tad after 9. Mike, can we hear from you?
Sure.
Come on down.
That's what I was just gonna say, I think he'd be, within the time we have left, I think we can knock that out.
And Mr. Uphoff, you have 2 more witnesses?
We do, but we could discuss after this, but I would assume that they may need to hold over. Unless you want to go a little
I know
bit.
you have your economic impact guy, and who's your other witness?
Decommissioning.
Decommissioning, okay, that's an important area that we need to spend some time with. But, all right, sir, I'm going to swear you in, if that's all right.
Go right ahead.
There you go. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give shall be true?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Could you please state your name?
My name is Mike Maggart, M-A-G-G-E-R-T.
M-A-G-G-E-R-T. Where do you live, Mike?
I live on the west side of Paris, but our ground is what we're talking about, approximately 1,500 acres probably.
Okay, so you've got 1,500 acres.
Yep.
That are proposed to be leased to this company.
That is correct.
Okay, I'll let you go ahead and say whatever you want to say, sir.
Well, I wasn't prepared to do this, but I'll attempt here. Farming's been good to us. My dad moved there in 1960. He just took his 65th crop out with us this year. I've been back on the farm since 1989. This is my 36th crop. So, I was 22, I believe. Ian showed up at our shop one day and said, "I'd like to talk to you about a solar farm." And we said, "Well, I don't know. I'm not really interested." And we talked a little bit more, and I said, "Send me a contract." And Dad, who's 88 this year, really got behind the ball, and so we talked a little bit more, and I contacted Ian, and we, over the next 9-10 months, we negotiated leases out. So I checked their company out, I checked a lot of other companies out, and we discussed and changed many things many times. A lot of what's already been discussed tonight is actually we've taken care of our leases, or in our agreement. I'm not at liberty to talk about it because I've got a privacy thing in that lease, but the project itself, they're in the quarter mile that you're talking about on houses that could affect, I count maybe 10 or 11 houses in that area. We own 3 of them. My dad will live in one of them. Our shop is located in it. We have other sites in it too, but so like I say, we thought about it, and then as it's progressed, farming's not real good now. And I have no son. I have 3 daughters. None of them want to come back. And quite frankly, I'd probably talk it out of them right now, coming back to the farm anyways, because right now these things aren't very good on the farm. So we started looking at this as an alternative for my family and our grandkids, and you know, and it's a game changer for us, really and truly. You know, we paid taxes on that ground for a long time, and you know, and I would hope that we would have the opportunity to do whatever we want with our land, you know, if we don't farm it. Like I say, farming, you know, my grandpa's all farmed, and you know, and all that. It's changed, and I've got grandkids now that I want to visit, and you know, and spend time with. And actually, this is my last year of farming this year because we're going to
relocate and go spend time with grandkids. And so the timing was right with us, and you talked about the tile a little bit. That was one of our big discussions. We put in almost 4 million feet of tile on this ground, since 2013. So I have records where all the tile are. And that was another discussion. They needed to maintain our waterways and our main tile for all of our neighbors around. That was another very important point, that I wanted to make sure that we got all taken care of. And I think we did. So, and like I said, I just hope that everybody will think about it's our ground, and we didn't think we'd ever have a solar farm on it, but as it's turned out, I think it's going to be the best thing for us and for the ground. And everybody talks about taking farm ground out of production. Well, I think we overproduce right now in the U.S. anyway, and to that effect, it will help other people, on hopefully price and get it priced back up, where everybody can make a living in farming again. So, and I think it's going to be good for the community because the tax money that's going to come back into it. And I think, you guys have worked with them. I know you have, because we've had discussions, and I think if you have concerns, I think they'll work with you because they work with us. And so I think you guys can work things out and to everybody's benefit. And I guess that's basic. And I'll take questions. I mean, if you guys have any questions for me, we'll fire right away. So.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Maggard, for your testimony.
Yeah.
Folks on the board, any questions for Mike? All right, very good. Members of units of local government, including school districts, any questions for Mr. Maggard? Any questions from the public, whether you live in county or out of county? Okay, yes, ma'am. Could you please state your name for the record?
Trisha Hilton.
Tricia, how do you spell your first name?
Tricia.
Okay, because there's a couple ways to spell it, so. Okay, Mrs. Hilton, you go right ahead.
There was something that you mentioned at the end of your speech was that it's our ground, and I didn't think that we'd ever have a solar farm on it. And my husband and I bought our house 2 years ago almost, and that was our ground, and we didn't think that we'd be surrounded by a solar farm. Congratulations to you for all your success, but why wasn't it considered, or why didn't anybody knock on our door and ask us what was going to, or how it was going to affect us, or our thoughts on it?
Well, and I understand that. But I'm trying to think how to word this, okay? If you say the house you live in and you painted it a color that I didn't like, okay? Would you come and ask me if you painted your house a bright orange? Would you have asked me before you painted it?
My rebuttal is the color of my house isn't going to change the property of your house.
Well,
or change the property value of your house.
well, I can't speak on value, okay, on whether it's going to change your value or not. I think I know you're right across the road from, I think I know where you live, so. And I think they're willing to, put buffers up, and I think they talked about buffers, like you're going to have buffers around the project to your house on that, and they're going to have to answer that, because I don't know where the buffers are going or all that kind of things. No, I did not go ask all the neighbors, or ask you, I guess, if it affected you or not, because I knew it probably would, yes.
Thank you, Mrs. Helton. I would just encourage some folks from the applicant to reach out and talk with Mr. and Mrs. Helton.
We will.
Yeah, because one thing, I said at the beginning of this, that I go around the state conducting these hearings in counties this size, some a little larger, some a little smaller. The one thing that I just don't like to see is when there are folks who are impacted in some way and a company just ignores them. And I don't know you folks. I know your attorney because he's appeared in hearings before me on a number of occasions. And I know he's a good lawyer and an honorable man. And I would just encourage you all to get together and try to have some conversation. So, in a small county, folks got to get along.
And I will say, we have discussed your house between us before all this happens. And I did not ask you, but you have been in discussions, my discussions with them too, yes.
All right. Are there any other questions for Mr. Maggart from members of the public? All right. Edgar County Staff and Consultants, Mr. Kite.
No questions.
All right. Redirect examination, questions from you, Mr. Uphoff?
No, sir.
Okay. Final questions for this witness come from members of the county board. Thank you, sir, for your testimony. I appreciate it. You may step down. All right. It is 22 minutes after 9. We said we'd go till approximately 9:30. Now, Mr. Uphoff, I know you have 2 expert witnesses in key areas that the board is going to want to hear. There's going to be questions. Is there any other member of the public who's been sitting here who would like to be sworn in and testify? Members of the public. And just because you don't do it tonight doesn't mean you can't do it when we come back at a subsequent night. And we're going to have to talk about that here in a minute. Anybody want to get up and say anything? All right, and we'll reserve. Mr. Help, would you like to tonight, or would you like to come back and do it another night? It's up to you, sir.
We'll hold off for another night.
Okay, yeah, and collect your thoughts and be able to present them. That's fine. All right. I guess we are, at least for this evening, done with calling witnesses. Now, the next thing we have to discuss is, and we're just going to have an open and frank discussion about when we're going to do this again. Now, I know there's been some discussion about potentially doing it during a morning meeting, but I don't know that that would work. So I think, yeah, so I think we probably need to have another night. Would that be fair, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Okay.
Board? Yes.
Yes.
All right. Now, I guess the first thing we have to know is, can we use the gym again? Danette?
It'll depend on the date. If you don't have a basketball game here, yes.
Okay. Is the only sport that's used in the gym the basketball right now?
Yes.
Okay. Volleyball's over?
It's not until later on.
Not until later on?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. All right. Well, let's get out your calendars.
Can I suggest we start with the superintendent to find out what dates are available?
Yeah.
Okay, the 21st is available.
You got to speak up, please.
21st, 22nd. Actually, 22nd and 23rd, we have parent-teacher conferences here, so there will be lots of people here anyway.
Yeah, we don't want to be here.
So
during all
the
that.
21st would work.
21st of October.
That's Tuesday, the 21st.
Mr. Uphoff, you're shaking your head no.
I'm not available.
He's not available. Okay. Because I'm sure you're in another hearing somewhere else.
That's actually correct.
What about the 20th?
And just for clarity, all the witnesses who have testified and been subject to cross-examination now, they're not going to be subject to recall, correct?
I don't believe they would be subject to recall unless,
The only, I think, the only question is whether the the board would want to hear back from anybody in particular. And if I were to guess, maybe you would want to hear back from Mr. Evans.
Yes.
If I'm understanding correctly.
If you'll be at the next one, that would be the only one that I would, yeah.
But the other witnesses, you're fine with not being present? Okay.
I'll be there.
Okay.
For sure.
All right, so
We'll send the sheriff out after.
Yeah.
Mr. Poling can go back to, where are you from? Minnesota. Dr. Olson can go back to Canada, and Mr. Balcom can go back to New York City and keep doing great work up there. So, all right. So, yeah, Mr. Evans, you have to be here.
I mean, I'm here.
It's-
You name the
it's
day,
your
I'm
job,
here.
you know,
Yeah.
So, all right. So, Danette, what other? Oh, hey, Holly, let's just go off the record for this discussion.
The 24th would be, that's a Friday. But we don't have kids, that whole entire day, the gym would be open.
Yeah. You're not available that day.
How about the 20th?
20th, we have a home basketball game.
Oh, I thought you
Yeah.
said that was the
22nd?
22nd, fifth?
I'm not
Teacher conference.
Yeah.
Mr. Uphoff's not available. Can we go to the week of the 27th of October, please?
27th, we're good. 28th, we're good. 29th. I think any day that week would work.
27th is Monday, 28th, Tuesday.
But of those, the only ones we don't have a hearing on so far would be the 30th that week.
That's the only day you're available?
It's the only day that we don't have a hearing already.
What?
Now, is
That's
there,
fine.
I guess I'm sorry.
The 30th is fine for our calendar.
October 30th is a Thursday?
Our expert witness on, Dr. Loomis here is not available on the 30th.
23rd.
Then I'll just testify for you, Dr. Lewis. I've heard him testify at least 10 times, so I have it almost memorized. No. Okay, if your witness is unavailable on October 30th, then let's go to the following week, which is the week of November 3. Is this a polling place?
The bus garages, so we're fine. But we have home games Monday and let's see. Monday, Tuesday. The 5th, Wednesday the 5th would work.
Okay, I can't make it that night.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
I would think by the time, we probably don't need a ton of people. Is there another space that would be able to accommodate this?
The library would, yes.
So I guess the question then might be, would that work for the 20th?
Can this whole group fit in the library?
Yes, or you could use the cafeteria too. We have 2 TVs in the cafeteria, which there'd be more space and table. I
We're
mean,
not married to the gym per
yeah,
se.
no, you could use the cafeteria because there are 2 TVs in there that hook up to computers.
Is that used for the concession stand or anything for your basketball?
Oh, yes, it is. Sorry, the 20th.
What about the library, though?
The library is not. You could use the library.
Yeah, so if that would work,
Can your witnesses?
Our
make
witnesses
that?
are good on the 20th. I'll obviously be here.
Courtroom won't work?
It might.
Well, there's 26 plus consultants here, people. And then us and the consultants.
It feels a lot tighter in there sometimes. I think we had quite more.
Upstairs, would that
Yeah,
be?
that would be where you want to do it.
More room than the downstairs courtroom?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that'd work.
Yeah. Courthouse?
The 20th?
Courtroom 1.
Would there be enough microphones?
Well,
There's tables that have microphone systems set up, and there's a podium, the microphone system. You could even sit on the bench. So you
Worst
might
case
like
scenario,
that.
we can bring a PA system with us if we really.
The only problem is that is always taped. The Illinois Supreme Court controls all of those mics.
No.
You can't use them.
No, they have an upgrade. They upgraded the sound system.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
They have two separate mics, one for the recording system and then one for the actual audio output.
All right,
I think we can accommodate the 20th then.
the 20th, you would have Mr. Evans and your other two witnesses. All right?
And we'd be talking at starting at either 5 or 6. We're not
5.
obviously going to need to go as long.
Well, we could start at 5, and if it does go long,
Only reason I was saying was because court wrapping up and courthouse personnel clearing out. So that's why I wasn't sure. It may be 5:30 or something. Give them time to clear out. But I don't know. Maybe they're cleared out by then.
4 o'clock will be fine.
Oh, okay.
That's when they're all out of there, so 5.
everybody's out by 4?
Oh,
Okay.
4:30. That would be it.
Okay, so 5 o'clock, October 20, courtroom 1. That's on the third floor. On the 3rd floor. Can all board members make it?
Well, we know us four can.
Yeah.
Russ isn't going, I don't know if Russ will be home in the evening or not, but.
Well, here's the other thing, do we have time, what are our legal requirements to post the meeting?
We would just have to announce that we're recessing and where to and the time, and then you're compliant on to repost it. We probably, would do a whole exact notice just to get it out there, but in terms of what I would suggest, because it probably wouldn't be possible for Holly to turn around a transcript in time, that we just keep it to these 4 board members as opposed to the other, including other board members. Not that we would want them to be included, but if they're going to be included as both, they would have to be able to review the transcript.
There's only one with that effect.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so it sounds like, if I'm understanding.
You guys your team is ready on October 20th?
Yeah, that's fine. And Holly?
I need to check with Jamie if she's back from Mexico. She'll probably want to do it. If she's not, I will. One of us will be here.
Okay, gotcha.
Great, court reporters get to go to Mexico, and we all get to go to the Crestwood Gymnasium.
Is that training over there?
It is.
Now, Mr. and Mrs. Helton, will you be able to be here next Monday night?
Should be.
Okay. Other folks who are interested, will you?
Bill?
Yeah, Mr. Wright, he had questions earlier, so, okay. And Ms. Keys, and any of the rest of y'all? You're not gonna be here next Monday? Can you send somebody else from the union to? You don't have anybody else who works at that union besides you. This gentleman gets to go to all the hearings in East Central Illinois, and he gets to get up and make a 3-minute statement about the importance of this project to union members. I couldn't testify for him, but I could for Dr. Loomis. Okay. And you folks who are sitting in the first row here, would you be able to be here next Monday if you want? Okay. Not sure? Well, is there anything you'd like to say on the record right now? No. Okay. All right. And the gentleman standing down here, are you guys good with next Monday? Okay. Because the one thing, and I had people holler at me in the county recently, as we were all talking, oh, are you ready? Are you ready? Somebody raised their hand in the gallery and said, what about us? And, we have to consider, because it's a public hearing, we have to, accommodate the public too. And I think that that's first and foremost for this board, to make sure the public gets to be heard. All right, October 20th.
And for those not familiar, come in the north door of the courthouse, would be in the basement. Go through the doors, there's an elevator there to either walk the steps or take an elevator, get upstairs.
It's the top floor?
Yes, 3rd floor.
3rd floor.
Do we know what the address is of the place?
115 West Court Street.
115 West Court Street. All right. Yes, ma'am. Oh, yeah. Ms. Connor.
I believe there's a prohibition maybe on cell phones in the courthouse. Will that apply after hours?
No.
Okay.
Okay, that's a good question. That's a real good question.
Still, no problem.
I can't believe
Rules still stands.
There's
I
only
need my cell
not
phone
103
to time
inches.
people. All right, so this public hearing.
You want to go back on the record, sir?
Yeah,
Okay.
back on the record. This public hearing on a special use permit application of State Line Energy Center LLC, construct and operate a solar energy facility 2.5 miles east of the city of Paris, Illinois. This hearing is in recess. The county board will recess until next Monday night, October 20th, 2025 at 5:00 p.m. And we will be reconvening at the Edgar County Courthouse, courtroom 1 on the top floor at 115 West Court Street in Paris, Illinois. Mr. Chairman, with your consent, we're in recess.
We're in recess.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Thank you, folks.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks to the consultants that came in and gave us the information they did. Thank you very much.